make it easy for startups to grow in the space. But before we start, I would like to know, how's everyone doing? Just the energy in the room. I see some people are gloomy. I don't know if it's been a heavy lunch or no lunch. I see some people seem to be tensed. Don't worry, we don't bite. It's a very, very safe space. Okay. And also for today's session, we had requested when signing up on the form that we'll be taking pictures and videos. So I believe if you did not consent to that, you talk to at the registration desk so that you don't take your pictures and videos. The purpose being all the pictures and videos that we take, we normally use them for either for Novartis or for HealthTech related activities. Awesome. So I'll just give a bit of a background about the HealthTech Hub and what it's doing. So it's a Pan-African HealthTech accelerator. Or someone has told me. But I can shout. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Awesome. So the HealthTech Hub is a Pan-African HealthTech accelerator based out of Kigali, Rwanda. And what essentially we do is we take in startups that are coming up, that are doing very nice innovations in the health tech space, groom them for a year, take them through a program whereby they're able to learn different things from how to pitch yourself, how to create an investor-ready business, how also to scale and also achieve product market fit. So the mission of the mic? Okay. Getting so many conflicting feedback. So the mission of the meetups is we already have the summits that are happening within the HealthTech Hub. We already have the Blueprint Summit. So the Blueprint Summit essentially is just to have conversations around policy with the different governments. So far this year we've had 2 Blueprint Summits. We had the first one in Kigali in March, whereby it was just now to be able to see what are some of the areas for collaboration and partnership between startups and policymakers, policymakers being government. And we had another one just last month in Dakar, Senegal. So the plan and the strategy is within 5-6 years to have at least coverage in all the different countries in Africa, so that also we can be able to help more and more health tech startups to be able now to get to the next level. So today's session, as I said, it's broken down into different, we have different sessions within the main session. And the first one I'll be inviting Dr. Mwiti Makatimo, who works with the Novartis Global within the regional Nairobi office, just to give us opening remarks, tell us a few things about Novartis, and then we progress from there. So, Dr. Mwiti, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Victor. And really, it's a great honor for me to stand here before you this afternoon. And with all the beaming faces, I can tell for a fact that we are up for a very interesting session this afternoon. For those of us coming to Nairobi for the first time, welcome to Nairobi. As the President of the Republic of Kenya has been saying recently, that this is the cradle of mankind, so don't be in a hurry to leave. In case your flight was scheduled for tonight, stretch it by an additional week. You can see me on how to take care of the bills, on a light note. So my name is Dr. Mwiti Makadimo, currently serving in Novartis, leading the Health System Strengthening Partnerships team for Sub-Saharan Africa. And before we move further on the opening remarks, I'd like to introduce my colleague, who you will be seeing a lot going forward on the interactions that pertain to East and Southern Africa cluster. And because I'm not sure that I can afford the bill to speak on his behalf, I will allow to breach protocol a bit and give him the mic to say hello, and then we'll continue with the opening remarks. Thank you. James.
Good evening. Hi, everyone. Victor, I think the people here are hungry. Do you have some snacks and some tea? I could be speaking on my behalf, but it is good to speak also on their behalf. As you have rightly said, Dr. Mwita has rightly said, my name is James Kumbura. I'm based here in Nairobi, working for Novartis Pharmaceuticals as the Health System Strengthening Partnership Specialist, covering this region, East and Southern Africa. It's my great pleasure to be here. I've heard very good news coming out of the HealthTech Hub Africa, and I asked Dr. Mwita to accompany him so that I can have that information firsthand. And to all the innovators, a very big congratulations to you. You are really the creme de la creme that we have. Out of the many millions that we have in Kenya and across the region, you guys, you are part of the innovators. And to just encourage you that even the most successful technologies that you see currently, Apple, Safaricom, et al., all of them were startups at some point. And so whatever idea that you're having definitely is going to blossom. Looking forward to continued engagements and looking forward to a very successful session this afternoon. Back to you, Dr. Mwita. And he's not leaving, it's only that he has some extended role. So I'll be holding his fort. Thank you.
Fantastic, let's appreciate Kumbura. So Victor, we start counting my 5 minutes from now, right? Yeah, so I think my point of appreciation in the opening remarks is to all of us once again for coming, to all the partners, all the institutions. This could not have been without you. The journey has not been as long as some of us might think, especially when you look at the distance that has been covered or the heights that have been scaled. And the reason why things have moved that quickly, that progressively, is because of partnerships, of working together. So as I was looking at what Victor and team tasked me to talk about in the opening remarks with regard to highlighting the importance of health tech innovations and the need to be a collaborative venture between entrepreneurs, investors, and government. Well, quite a difficult task, especially to this high-level group of stakeholders. Many things crossed my mind. In my history as a doctor, working in the public sector, working for non-state actors, working in the government, and seeing how that transition looks like in the journey of the patient, I thought probably I would talk about 3 things, or 3 areas that we could focus ourselves as we look forward to collaborate. And whenever I'm in any session thinking and talking about health tech innovation, I always want to compare that to fintech, and further seek to mention that if there is any part of the world that is going to benefit the most from health tech innovation, it is the global south, it is sub-Saharan Africa, and the people that are working in this room will drive that change. And the reason I say so is because of this. When you look at the 3 things I'm about to talk about, the patient, the caregiver who's the doctor, allow me to put this there, and the health system within which these interactions happen, every one of those is looking at how do they improve health for the patient. And that patient is amongst the population. In this part of the world, you realize that there is so much challenge that bedevils the patient. One, from disease awareness and education. There is low levels of awareness and education. So that forms the first area of possible intervention from a health tech standpoint to empower that patient so that they improve their health-seeking behavior. And for those of them that are already on care, to ensure that they are able to be empowered with information that helps them to take the right decisions at the right time. Empowering the patient in a very patient-centric way has got to be the cornerstone of any successful health tech innovation. And I believe everyone in this room who's operating in this space agrees with this. The second part is on the players, and allow me to say the doctor. We're fully cognizant that within the healthcare delivery space, there are multiple cadres working within multidisciplinary settings. But in the very remote of the remotest places where you would not even find a doctor, whichever caregiver that delivers the health service also is a key target for the health tech innovations that continue to be churned and will continue being churned out of these kinds of interactions. We've got to think about solutions that work for them, empower them with knowledge, empower them with information, help them to link better with their patients, with their clients, and help them to stay ahead of the disease that would be pursuing their patients in that way. Thirdly and finally, we've got to think about the health system. And when looking at the health system, there are really many facets. We always say that the government in any place is the primary custodian of delivery of health services within the health system. But then within that, we've got multilateral agencies. Eiling is here from the Global Fund as one example of such entities. When you look at the facets of the health system, be it from healthcare financing, be it from leadership and governance, be it from health information systems, every one of these needs data that is reliable, needs data that is timely, needs data that is consistent, needs data that is accurate, needs data to inform decision making. So that if technology will play that role of empowering these key players within the health system who collaboratively come together to work for the patient or enable the caregiver to deliver better for the patient, then that health tech innovation for sure is headed for the skies. So as we gather here together this afternoon as entrepreneurs, as investors, as government players, as players from multilateral institutions, and so on and so forth, as interested parties, our challenge should be one, that we are inventing for the patient solutions that for sure will be acceptable to the patient, solutions that will work for the healthcare giver, and solutions that indeed will enable the players in that ecosystem to do what needs to be done, like yesterday, for the benefit of that patient. And as I close, allow me to say one thing. Last time when I was at the HealthTech Summit in Rwanda, I remember talking to one investor and also talking to a number of entrepreneurs. What struck me was somewhat, the feeling that there's already a technology that does this, and my idea is about what that technology does. When you think about it from a market perspective, there's still so much room, a lot of demand. As we do our innovation, let it be driven by demand, and let's also not just respond to what is familiar to the players in the ecosystem based on their demand levels, but also in a disruptive way. In this case, I always think about in the area of fintech, an example from M-Pesa. I believe all of us in this room know what M-Pesa is. Previously, it would be unimaginable, about 20 years ago, that people would be moving money around on their phones, and even the person who's not gone to school out there who has a mobile phone can actually interact and do banking right from their farm or right from their whatever place. Let's think about healthcare this way. I feel that sometimes we've thought about healthcare from a wellness and health point of view, but from a sickness point of view. Let's seek to innovate for health so that it empowers the population, the patients, the people delivering service, to deliver that from a wellness and health perspective. And always know that even if there is a technology that looks like what your idea looks like, there is so much demand out here. Go ahead, test it, make sure that it's acceptable, make sure that it's scalable and delivers impact. Even if it's impacting that one patient, that one hospital, it can always be a point for growth. So with those many remarks, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome you once again for this event. And I believe, just like I prophesied at the beginning, it's going to be a heartwarming, it's going to be an inspiring session. It's one that will motivate you to invest, to continue innovating, to continue collaborating. Because with partnerships, we'll be able to take this journey of health tech innovation to the next level. So I believe, Victor, I can hand it over to you, or do I invite the keynote speaker? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mwiti, for those awesome remarks. And also just highlighting the importance of health tech innovations in the space. So I've been, in the few minutes Dr. Mwiti has been speaking, I've been accused of two things. One, I've been told I didn't introduce myself, but I think it comes from where we come from. We just jump into conversations without saying who we are. And it's also a very Kenyan thing. So that's what I might assume. My name is Victor Ambuyo. I will work with the HealthTech Hub in just leading their communications. So if you've gone to the socials, any material you've seen going out to on the social media channels, it's I'll take credit, but it's the work of the awesome team that I work with. So you'll see some of them around. I think some of them have been the ones coordinating and ushering you in. So I work with them in ensuring like all the communications that go out is aligned. So towards the end, I think you'll be seeing all of them. I'll just be introducing them to the team so that you can see them. And the second thing I've been accused of is I don't know how to hold the microphone, so I think we'll work on that as we go around. Because we normally do this, but not without microphones. So at this point, I would like to introduce Ashling, who's one of our partners on the HealthTech Hub. But before I do that, I just wanted to urge everyone, because I see we are very scattered. If you're sitting at the back, if you can just, we have quite a few seats in the front. If you can move to the front so that when you have people coming in, at least it can be quite orderly. Awesome. Thank you for that. Awesome. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Ashling Kwak. I hope I've said that right, Ashling, who's works with the Global Fund, is the one leading, he's a portfolio manager leading the private sector engagement. She's one of the, I will say, I think since we started working with the HealthTech Hub, there's someone who's been very, very proactive in ensuring like the mission of the hub is aligned with the objectives and everything is being done properly. It's been Ashling. So at this point, I'd like to introduce, to more or less just welcome her to give us a few remarks about the HealthTech Hub and the great work that they're doing. Ashling?
Thank you so much, Victor. Good evening, everybody, and it's really great to be here in Nairobi. I'm Ashling Quirk. As Victor said, I work in the Global Fund's private sector engagement team. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we as the Global Fund joined the HealthTech Hub Africa. And put it in context a little bit, and then I'll talk about, I'll go a little bit deeper on what the HealthTech Hub does, some of the impact that we're already seeing, and yeah, then close with a call for all of you to join us. So, you know, I think all of you in this room are all too familiar with the health challenges that we face on the continent of Africa. Africa bears 22% of the global disease burden, 3% of the workforce, and so the resources are already stretched, right? And as much as we've made great progress in combating infectious diseases like TB, AIDS, and malaria, which is our mission as the Global Fund, so together with our partners, with ministries of health, our implementing partners, NGOs, etc., together we've more than halved deaths from TB, AIDS, and malaria over the last 20 years. However, we're concerned that we're going to miss the Sustainable Development Goal of ending TB, AIDS, and malaria by 2030. COVID has put us off track. And now climate change is you know, just throwing up a whole new range of challenges. So in short, the challenges grow despite the progress that we're making. And we have to think about new ways and smarter ways to make investment go further. And I think importantly also to bring greater equity in access to healthcare. So as the Global Fund, many of you may know that we're very much a partnership organization. So we partner with ministries of health, we partner with civil society, and we partner with the private sector. Because these are big challenges, we can't do them alone. And as part of our mission to end TB, AIDS, and malaria, a core focus is also strengthening health systems more broadly. Right? Because we also recognize you can't end TB, AIDS, and malaria in isolation of strong health systems that are ultimately going to serve non-communicable diseases. You know, bodies are not siloed, so we have to serve we have to strengthen systems holistically, and we have to serve and support patients holistically. And so we see the private sector as being an extremely important provider of both finance, but also of the solutions to meet some of these challenges. More specifically, we see that there's a lot of untapped potential in data and digital health or health tech to address some of these challenges. And I think importantly to help really put the patient at the center of the delivery of healthcare. And Dr. Moithi, I think you really emphasize the importance of that. And equally, and I loved also your comments around fintech, and not just because I'm a former banker now working in health tech, but I think that we have so much that we have to learn from how we've improved access to financial services, particularly on this continent and particularly in this country, right? So technology has been an incredible equalizer for access to financial services. Why are we not doing the same for health? Health is one of the most unequal, public goods, human rights that we still have. Why are we not building on fintech, layering on health to improve that access? So these are some of the things that we're thinking about. We've been working with the private sector for a long time as a global fund in various capacities. But I think one of the things that we realized in more recent years is that we haven't been working enough with local private sector. And ultimately, it's the companies and entrepreneurs, all of you who are in this room, who are closest to the challenges that are going to solve the challenges, those challenges most effectively, because you know what they are. You understand the ecosystem that Dr. Moithi has described. And so if we want to take a patient first and problem driven approach to how we solve these challenges, then we have to be working with and supporting entrepreneurs. So when the Global Fund came in contact with the HealthTech Hub Africa, we realized that this was an ideal platform for us to do our small part to support entrepreneurs on the continent to address some of these challenges and strengthen health systems more broadly. So to come on to a little bit more what the HealthTech Hub Africa is, I like to describe it very simply as a platform which brings together entrepreneurs, governments, but also funders, right? And brings all of these key actors of the ecosystem together in one place. It sounds very simple, but I haven't seen anybody else who's doing it. And again, if I think back to 10 years ago, when I was in banking with ABSA in South Africa, there was a lot of skepticism and there was a lot of resistance. The banks were not working with the entrepreneurs and the fintechs initially. And it was really fintech hubs and innovation hubs that started to bring these different actors of the ecosystem together. And over time, the banks realized, oh, well, we have to collaborate. These are the solution providers of tomorrow. And over time, thanks to convening platforms like the HealthTech Hub for finance, we started to see fintech scale within big banks, et cetera. And fintech started to scale, right? And I think we've seen, and if you look at where venture capital in Africa is going, the majority of it is going into fintech, right? We're not there yet with health tech, but we have exactly that potential ahead of us. But we need platforms like the HealthTech Hub to bring all of you together with governments, with the funders. We know that there's fantastic solutions, right? I have been working in Africa for nearly 20 years. And I keep coming back to this continent because I haven't experienced the same level of energy and drive and creativity anywhere else. But that creativity, unless you match it to a market, is going to go nowhere, right? And so that's why fast-tracking solutions within public health systems is really critical to the sustainability of these solutions and the growth and the employment creation that comes with it, but equally it's what's key to actually these solutions being able to solve the challenges that they seek to solve. So the HealthTech Hub, I would say that is its first, that is in simple terms what it does. But it does a lot more than that, right? How does it deliver on this mission? It's through mentorship. It's through matching entrepreneurs with funding. It's through work on the policy environment. And so thanks to the fantastic partners that we have, Bridge for Billions, so Sharon, stand up, because Sharon is really the face of the HealthTech Hub. So, so thanks to fantastic partners who are working daily with entrepreneurs, not just in Rwanda, but through the hybrid platform that is the HealthTech Hub, and through the online platform that has been created to provide this mentorship, networking, access to finance to entrepreneurs right across the continent. The HealthTech Hub has already worked with more than nearly 70 startups to date. And this is in 1.5 years. So I forgot to say that the HealthTech Hub was founded only in 2022. So I think the progress that we've seen in just a 1.5 years is absolutely phenomenal. And the fact that you have all of these different partners listed here, associated, funding, bringing technical assistance, you know, is really a testament to the momentum and the value that the HealthTech Hub Africa is bringing already. It's creating jobs. So Sharon, I believe 530 jobs so far in 2023.
Yeah, for both it's 830.
How much? 830. In 2 years, 830 jobs. I think this year alone, there's been an additional $4 million that's been raised for the cohort of entrepreneurs, the 30 companies that are part of this year's cohort. And so there's real tangible benefits. I know some of the former and current cohorts are here tonight, so I think for those of you who are not familiar with the HealthTech Hub or who may be not part of the cohort, please, you know, speak to the entrepreneurs and hear firsthand what's working, as well as maybe what's not working. I think we'd love to hear what else do we need to be doing, right? And I think one of the things that we need to be doing as we go forward is understanding beyond the traditional funding that startups have access to today, beyond that grant funding from the likes of the Global Fund and Novartis Foundation, the Patrick J. McGovern Foundation, who's the other anchor partner. How do we start supporting companies to transition to more commercial capital? And I was delighted to speak earlier with, I think, a health tech company who's fast-tracked, we can definitely say has fast-tracked across public health systems in Africa, Maisha Meds. Dan, maybe you want to just let everybody know who you are, because I think for those entrepreneurs who were earlier in the journey, I think the Maisha Meds model is a really interesting model. And has probably there's a lot of lessons to be learned from some of these companies who are further along. But equally, I think there's still challenges, right? Particularly on the financing front. We know that a lot of health tech in Africa is donor dependent. And that comes with all kinds of complications. So how do we collectively, and this is one of the things that's on, you know, really the agenda for next year and the year after the HealthTech Hub Africa is, how do we shake up the financing model of health tech in Africa? Because donor funding is not sustainable. And it also has very real implications for business models, et cetera. So in terms of what else we need to be doing, that's one key area, and we'd love to talk to anybody who wants to talk to us about that. So let me, in closing, let me just say that you know, we're very much a coalition I liked, I think the Patrick J. McGovern Foundation earlier this week coined it as a movement. And I think we're just getting started as the HealthTech Hub Africa. We are, we're constantly learning. We want to learn from all of you. We want to hear the feedback. And we want to know what else we should be doing differently. We want to work with more partners. In particular, we want to work with more ministries of health. Stephen, I'm looking at you, Ministry of Health Kenya. That's your challenge. And because it's only by working more closely with more ministries of health that we're going to, understand what are the challenges that need to be solved. Secondly, we start to create that market, and these are big challenges. So we need to work together to solve them. So yeah, in closing, thank you all for being here on behalf of the HealthTech Hub and all of our partners, Novartis Foundation, Patrick J. McGovern Foundation, and the Global Fund. Really great to meet you. And I would just say in closing, last closing, a big thank you to Novartis Foundation for starting this, right? There are not many pharmaceutical companies, and I can say this because I used to work for one as well. There's not many pharmaceutical companies who understand that to be successful and profitable in the market, you have to pay attention to the public health sector. And it is in everybody's interest to grow and strengthen the public health system. And I think it has been, for me, so refreshing to work with the Novartis Foundation, who are absolutely committed to using data and health tech technologies to solve for some of the problems that are not being solved for, and to do so in a way that really brings equitable access to health for all. So thank you to Novartis and Novartis Foundation, and looking forward to talking to you all later in the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisling, for that. It was really, really, I couldn't add anything more to that. I'm still getting remarks. My microphone handling skills are not at par. For some of you, you'll have to excuse me. So just to echo some of the things that Aisling has said, especially in terms of just how to coordinate and work with each other as you find out for the innovators and also, let's say, for government. I think myself being, having in both areas whereby I was part of the initial cohort, the first cohort of the HealthTech Hub. This is 2022. And then now being able to work with Novartis Foundation. So I've had both the inside and the outside look. Now being able to see now their vision and also what they're trying to do. And also having being in several programs across the continent, also beyond, it's really, really one of the most. I like how their model is, because you understand, for you to be able to really, really innovate and come up with solutions for the public masses, first you have to work with innovators who are more or less linked to the public and who are really, really creating solutions that are more or less domiciled in the different regions. And I think later when we have the different startups who are just within the cohort and also be within the current cohort and in the previous cohort talking about themselves, we shall also be able to see how Novartis Foundation, through the work of the HealthTech Hub Africa, is really, really trying to bring all that together for it to make a sustainable model all through. So thank you again for that and for all the great work that you do. For the next session, it's a very intense session. Heads up, it's a very intense session, and it's one of the sessions I've been looking forward to today, because now we are able to have conversations. What are some of the challenges that are happening in this space, and how can we be able to combat them, right? So the next session is geared, it's centered around the theme that we have for today, which is unlocking investment in the health tech sector. And just beyond the theme itself, we shall also be talking about policy, how policy plays into innovations. We shall also be talking about what investors are looking for, because if you look at it, you realize these three players are very, very pivotal for any work to be done or for any progress to be done. For instance, what do I mean by that? For instance, we have the innovators who are coming up with solutions. They go to the ground, they see what's missing in where they are, they're able to ideate around that, come up with innovative solutions. From the government's perspective, government is now coming up with policies that support both the growth and the scale of these innovations. And for investors, now they're able now to support those innovations, because they find out especially for the continent that you're in, for some of the startups that you have in Africa, you really can't compare them with what you have in Silicon Valley, because you find for Silicon Valley, they are years ahead in terms of investment, in terms of how investors approach startups and how investors approach innovations. But then in Africa, we still have we're still trying to go around some few issues before we get to that. So I'm really, really looking forward to this session, because we shall be able now to address some of those challenges. We shall be able to now just see like what are some of the issues that we can collaboratively work on to make it easier for startups to grow ahead. So at this point, I would like to invite my panelists to our stage here. So I'll start with Dr. Stephen Mutiso. So Dr. Stephen Mutiso is the one leading renal programs in the non-communicable diseases sector in the Ministry of Health. So Dr. Mutiso. The next person you shall have Tom Kinyanjui. So Tom Kinyanjui is the co-founder and CEO of Neuro Labs Africa, which is also part of the HealthTech Hub cohort. The next person is Jackson Mwatha. Jackson is a venture capitalist and investor with very long years of investing, and is also the one head of investments and transaction services at Will Grow Africa. We also have Alan Mzungu, who's the managing partner of MMS Advocates, but unfortunately he just told me he's running a bit late, but he should be here any minute. Also join the panel. And the moderator of our session will be Alice Muhuhu, who's the founder and CEO of Aurora Health Systems, part of the HealthTech Hub program. So welcome, and looking forward to an engaging session.
Thank you, Victor. So my name is Alice Muhuhu. I'll be your moderator today. I'm a doctor in training and founder of Aurora Health Systems. But before we start, I want to welcome the panel today. We have a very diverse panel. We have investors, we have startup founders and lawyers as well. So I'm going to give them a minute to introduce themselves and just say what they do.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, I'm Jackson Mwatha. I work for Will Grow Africa. I had investments there. So over the last 14 years of my career, I've worked across various industries, cutting across, healthcare, manufacturing, agribusiness, FMCG. And so I currently head investments at Will Grow Africa. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, 1, 2, mic test. Hello. 1, yeah, this is much better. So my name is Tom. I'm a co-founder at Neuro Labs Africa. Neuro Labs Africa is an innovative medical technology company where we screen medical images for common indicators of tuberculosis, pneumonia, lung cancer, and in the near future, we're hoping to move to prostate, breast, as well as other types of cancers. I like to say we're a bit early stage. We're currently doing clinical trials with UNICEF Innovation Fund. I have a background in machine learning and data science, and that's when I discovered the potential of technology to disrupt the health sector. And like my very learned colleagues have shared, I like to also compare fintechs and health techs, having been in both industries at some point. And I like to say if I go to Rwanda today and I need a loan and I'm in Rwanda, I'll automatically get my data there. I don't know how they'll do it, but all my credit history will be in Rwanda for that loan. With my health records, that will not be the case. So I feel there is need to innovate till we get to that level. So thanks a lot.
I don't know. Can you hear me? Yeah. Am I loud enough? I'll try this one. This is better. Oh, well, good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Mutiso. I am a medical doctor by base training and an epidemiologist. I believe I started out as a communicable disease epidemiologist, but I have slowly gravitated into the expanding field of non-communicable disease. I work at the Ministry of Health in Nairobi, Kenya, where I coordinate renal activities in the NCD division, but I also do a lot of key M&E programming. And I'm dabbling in digital health quite a bit, so I don't know if I'm losing my way or finding more opportunities to put out my agenda. Of course, in government, we have lots of roles, and in health, we do have a devolved system of government. So at the national level, we do quite a bit of policy and technical support. And then at the subnational level, that's our implementation level. And I think we are all privy to massive strides that we're making in the health sector, especially in the digital space. And we're looking to capitalize on that at both levels. So I'm keen to see how we can leverage on moving digital health to provide solutions for the patients at both levels. And I'm actually particularly interested in public-private partnerships, so this should be interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as Victor mentioned, I'm part of the 2023 cohort from the Novartis Foundation. We are Aurora Health Systems, so we manufacture wearable technology in order to measure for cardiac biomarkers and to improve cardiovascular disease diagnosis in Africa. So just a background about myself. So currently I work at the biggest public hospital in East and Central Africa, Kenyatta National Hospital. I also work a bit sometimes in a private hospital, Mpisha Hospital. I've had training in my medical school education, a little bit in America and UK. So I'm sitting at quite the intersection, and I have a bird's eye view of the whole healthcare industry. So now I'm back working for the government and also on the business side of medicine. Yeah, so I'm going to start with a very interesting statistic that I found. So exactly 19 years ago, in 2001, the African countries at the African Union sat down and agreed that the national allocation for healthcare budget should be 15%. That was 19 years ago. As of today, only South Africa has attained that goal of allocating 15% healthcare budget. Most African countries currently are allocating between 2 to 4%. In Kenya, it's 4.3% as of today. So yeah, that's very interesting, and so the burden is falling on out-of-pocket payments as well as donor inflow, which Aisling, I hope I said your name right, Aisling mentioned that it's not sustainable. So I want to move the question over to the investor. What are the current investment trends in health tech, such as venture capital funding, mergers and acquisitions, IPO in the sector?
Thank you. I think I'll begin by saying that's a very interesting statistic, and I've also observed the same thing. You know, the government allocation or funding towards healthcare. The good thing is that the trend seems to change. I mean, there's increased engagement by government. I mean, the various African governments, partly driven by funders, yeah, because of the entire core funding. I don't say movement, but you know, there's a core funding movement happening in the funding space, where the private funders are lobbying government to come in and commit even more to healthcare financing. So what I'm going to say in terms of the current trends in investments, I'll say that especially in early stage healthcare, So this is a very early, very young subsector of health. And you find that if you look like 20 years back, there were not too many investors who were focusing on healthcare startups, for example. And even now, I think Vilgro Africa, where I work, we are among the very few players in that space, where we actually incubate, early stage healthcare enterprises, and also provide them with seed and pre-seed capital. So I have seen various innovative instruments come up in this space. There's a lot of, besides just the traditional instruments like debt and equity, there's a lot of creativity happening in the healthcare financing. If you look around, you hear a lot of safe investments going around, lots of convertible notes, lots of venture debt. So the good news is that more investors are coming to this space. There's more funding moving around, both on the grant side of things and also the more commercial capital.
Thank you, Tom. Maybe you can touch on your experience as a startup in the ecosystem.
I like to say investments in Africa is quite different from what we're used to, or rather what happens beyond Africa. I'll give an example with myself. So I like to say, and I like to tell founders, there are various ways you could raise capital. And I got to somewhere and I realized sometimes you don't really need money. Sometimes you really need a good team. Sometimes you really need to think and innovate. Because when you have money, you throw problems, or you throw money to problems instead of innovating. So when I was founding Neurolabs Africa, I remember we participated in a hackathon. And it was a Canadian hackathon. This was during COVID, and managed to win $4,000. That's what we used for incorporation the following year. That was in 2021. I remember we got a few. You mentioned the statistics for the government, but we have a lot of private investors coming in, investing in the healthcare space, probably like Vilgro and HealthTech Hub as well, and many other players within Africa. So from there, I got an angel investment of $4,000 from a close friend, not a close family friend. And from there, I got my third investment from UNICEF. Then I got another investment from Vilgro. Then I also got other investments from prizes, winning prizes, like we won an MIT Pitch Prize and Harvard one as well. So basically, we've been raising money through so far because at the time we were doing a lot of building a minimum viable product. But away from that, now let's talk about how the funding works. I believe it's a bit difficult to get funding in Africa, because if I told an investor to invest probably 100K USD on my business within the Kenyan setting, I think they would prefer to go to China and buy goods worth 100K and come sell here. So that's the reality. But you see, in Silicon Valley, you probably you won't be going to that level. So we find this cash going into startups because the government policy is different. So in Africa might be different as well. But what I would say in terms of investments, especially in the startup phase, is get a prototype going before even you start looking for investments. That would be something I would advise. So, but investments are there, money is there, but they have to be value for money. If there is value for money, then investments will follow. I think that's my take.
Stephen, do you want to speak on the Kenyan ecosystem of health tech?
Yeah, well, for those of you who are Kenyans, mambo ni matatu. There are only 3 things. Well, that's something that our president says, and the very first thing speaks towards political dispensation. We're living in a very interesting time where the government's trajectory is towards developing health and health systems, and particularly primary healthcare networks, to bring services to the people. So it's patient-centric. And there's a very big push to make most of these services digital. So the very first thing is that we have the political goodwill, and the second is we have a digital health bill whose first reading was in Parliament this week. And what's the purpose of this bill? It defines the space in terms of a digital health agency that manages the workings around digital health. So they will be looking into issues within that bill about management of health information and health data that's targeted towards improving health. And the third thing, which I think sort of preceded the bill, is the interoperability framework. I think some of us have interacted with that document, and that is basically the rules that govern the sandbox. So who is playing in the sandbox? It's the people sitting before me. It's the innovators. It's actually the guys who come in with the ideas. There's the funders in the sandbox. We just make the framework and everyone's allowed to play. So for me, I feel like this is quite an interesting time to be in health and in health tech. And I'm really grateful to see all these people here. And I really believe that if you're intentional, do not be on the sidelines when a revolution is about to happen. Talk, speak, reach out. This is the forum. So based on that, I know government is not well known for conducting business. It is not reputable. But public-private partnerships can take many shapes. They can have many faces. They can have different ways of doing things. I can see some of my colleagues I've interacted with. I think Eric is here from Medtronic. He's already plugged into the digital superhighway. The interoperability framework worked fantastic. We have unique identifier mechanisms coming up. Data is becoming portable. The time is now. The only thing I can do is tell you that the sandbox is ready. Let's get our hands dirty. Let's play. Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning this sandbox, because I'm personally very interested in this. And I'm going to segue to the next question about legal and regulatory challenges, which I personally, our startup has struggled with a lot. We make medical devices and they're wearable, and of course there's a lot of very sensitive patient data. So I would like to know, what is the government doing, and even the private sector, about these regulatory challenges that startups like us.
Anyone want to go?
Anyone.
And in the digital health bill, one of the key things is the Digital Health Agency, which has a board that defines now the legal boundaries. One of the key things that I noticed is that regulatory affairs tend to be restrictive, or at least are perceived to be restrictive. In this particular instance, it's actually opening up the space. I believe within one of the key deliverables is that we want to create a matrix where you can actually cost what it will take to start out. If you want to venture, like my colleague Tom, there's a blueprint that tells you it takes you this long to get this license, it takes you this long to get this license, this is the number of days, these are the requirements, posted somewhere which you can reach. And those are the legal requirements, and they will have attached costs, so that you don't have the struggles that, well, innovators and people coming into the field have. Another thing that was very sensitive has to do with data security and privacy. We do have deep-seated issues surrounding this. Legislation solves a lot of these problems. The Data Protection Act of 2019 actually started to actually pull the wool that was covering our eyes. A lot of us are medics, had no real idea. I don't know if I'm speaking for myself. The issues around data ownership, who is a data handler, who is the controller, and a lot of the solutions that we are trying to build may contravene some of these sort of boundaries. It's very, very interesting that you would have a digital health bill that speaks quite well with all the other existing frameworks. So we do have a data policy that was put out in 2015. It speaks to the Health Act of 2017, which speaks to the Data Protection Act of 2019, which also speaks to the Digital Health Bill of 2023. No one wants to read all that, but we can create a space where it's easy for you to fit into those rules. So take a more optimistic take towards legislation and regulatory affairs. Keep a very keen eye out for patient rights and ownership of data. And I think we should be good to go. I hope that answers some of the questions. Thank you. Over.
Thank you.
In terms of a regulatory framework, we tend to be on the receiving side as the startups. And I want to talk about the unrealistic things that the government has set. I'll give you an example. I should have not mentioned that before I give you a story. So I visited the Data Protection Act office. It's called OCDB, Office of the Data Protection Act, yeah. And I wanted a data processor and a data controller. For those in Kenya would understand why you need that when running a startup. Guess what the requirement was? Number one, I needed to have audited financial accounts. A startup. So you're even starting, but you need to have audited financial accounts. Is that really reasonable? So I think there is room to, as we create some of these regulatory frameworks, to be realistic. If I have an idea, I honestly don't have audited financial accounts for my idea. I even haven't invested a shilling on that idea. Then I remember talking to one of our advisors who owns a pharmaceutical company that innovates from the West, and he feels like when I come to Kenya and I come to Kenya Poisons Board, as far as I pay, that's all. They don't really get to do any scrutiny of my drugs. It's a matter of, this is the fee, this is what in terms of actuals of what you should meet, like your drug should meet this threshold. There is not really any equipment, I would say. There is no framework to actually test these things out. So I believe in terms of regulatory framework, we still have a long way to go. And it's amazing now to see when the government coming into such forums. They're very difficult to find, especially here. So we are hoping in the near future that this will change, and will change for the good. That's why we're seeing it's even very easy to go do other regulatory frameworks like HIPAA. You see, on my AWS, I can do a HIPAA score. I don't need to even go to their office. Just on my Amazon Web Services, I can do a HIPAA score. So we could make things as easy as that. And I would say, let's involve innovators while making the regulatory frameworks, because I don't understand why I need an audited financial account to get a certificate that allows me to handle data sets in Kenya. So for me, that was out of my mind. I couldn't believe what I saw as the requirement at the time.
Thank you. So in Kenya, we have a very popular saying. We like to say, "Kwa ground vitu ni different," meaning that on the ground things are very different. And like Tom said, we're very happy to have the government in forums like this, because yes, they put out guidelines on documents and on paper, but when you yourself are going to that office, you're faced with a person. When I go to the office, I don't meet Stephen. Yeah? I don't meet you. I meet a person who is not of very good understanding about what startups entail, and that can be very frustrating. And hello, can you hear me? Okay, sorry. And so, yeah, like I said, I don't meet Stephen in the office. I meet a clerk who, is not understanding about like different regulatory frameworks of like startups, yeah, because it's a very unique set of challenges we face. So I think these conversations are extremely important for us to like bridge this gap. So I want to move on onto the topic of global opportunities for health tech companies. So right now, Africa is carrying the about 25%, as you mentioned, of the global disease burden. And what's interesting is that, in as much as we carry, like I would say, a quarter of the global disease burden, we spend an average of 8 to 129 USD per capita on health, compared to high-income countries that spend 4,000 USD. So you can see there's a huge gap there financially, and I wonder if that affects like investors when they want to come to Africa, knowing that we don't have the healthcare budget. Basically, like the average person cannot really afford certain things. Does that affect investment from your perspective?
I think, like I said, this is starting to change, and we have seen some improvement. Happening. What I'll say is that investment. Okay, there are so many factors that affect investment, and the willingness of investors to actually come to the continent and deploy capital. I've always said that there is more money chasing good deals than there are good deals which are fundable on this continent. And you might think there's a capital deficiency, and that's not a truth. And I'm going to say that the focus really should be on investment readiness. If you have a good innovation, a good business model, if you understand the kind of capital you're looking for, because most of us Africans only know the banks, the commercial banks, and you don't know the entire landscape of venture capital and private equity. There's funds out there, and now the question really, how must you look for it to attract certain kinds of capital? So I would say investment readiness is really the biggest bottleneck, right? Because there are so many good ideas in Africa. There's so many good innovations. But now, beyond just the science part, where you've worked on a good product, now there's an entire business side of that conversation, and so many, especially in our field of work, the scientists who are not always like who are not always business people. I think there's a whole angle. There's a context in which they really, they really should start thinking about how to convert an idea or innovation into a business is actually fundable. And that's we cut across venture capital, donor funding. Like you must be able to illustrate and demonstrate how you're building a scalable business.
Okay. I can move on to the next thing about compliance challenges. So for startups in Kenya like us who want to move into regional markets, what would you advise us in terms of like FDA, ISO regulation? How would you, or would you just advise us first to start with the compliance in Kenya, the regulatory approvals in Kenya first, and then move on? Because for you to scale, you have to pursue those international regulatory bodies. So what would your advice be for anybody?
I would say it's critical to be aware of this. The regulations that affect your business. And I would say if you're working, for example, in Kenya, it's good for you to be aware of what's happening in the East African scope. And then, the bigger the scope you have, the better, right? It's just that it's not always easy to get a global approval of your product. So I would say start where you are, and then you continue growing like that. Get as much of that as you can, because then that affects how you think about your market size. Yeah.
Tom, is your startup? How are you guys dealing with international regulation as a startup?
For me, I would I have a different opinion apart from what Jackson said. Sorry, 1, 2. I think for me, I would do the global one. Ask me why? Because I'll probably spend money in East Africa, or rather in Kenya. Then I'll spend more money in East Africa. Then I'll spend more money in West Africa. Then I'll spend more money in South Africa. But this is copied from a global standard point of view. So probably the Data Protection Act is probably more or less what HIPAA requires, probably what works for us. So I think these global regulatory frameworks would be the best practice. Then a country comes and pick their best fit. So from the best practice, they have a best fit for them. So for me, I would prefer to kill a bird with one stone. So do the global one, and automatically your best fit is sorted out. You probably have to deal with a few hiccups here and there. For instance, I even find our government doesn't follow their own rules and regulation in data privacy. For instance, there is one that says all data collected within the Kenyan demographic region should be stored within the Kenyan demographic region. Our elections data was stored on AWS. So I'm like, follow your rules. This is what you said for us. Why don't you do it yourselves? So it makes it difficult for me to abide to the rules that it's like walk the talk. So for me, that's how I feel. I feel as far as we set the rules, and this is all brought about because of setting standards that are probably out of scope or unrealistic. They're even unrealistic to you yourself who's setting the rules. So you don't have the infrastructure to store data locally. So I think the first thing is have the infrastructure, then set the rules. Because I can't set rules if the infrastructure is not there.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting this awesome session. I just want to break the session for like 2 seconds and introduce our panelist who's on time. His name is Alan Mzungu. He's a lawyer with 10, 15 years legal experience. So he's also part of the panel. Sorry, continue.
Karibu Akili, you're just in time. I was really taking the heat. Well, I think there's so many ways we can look at this conversation. When we talk about compliance and global standards, medicine is generally standardized in terms of guidelines. When you're practicing clinical medicine, almost all the documents are based on a WHO template, something that works around that space. So if you want to develop pharmaceutical lines, the Kenya Essential Medicines List, we build it off a WHO template for essential medicines. And those are global documents. So why not iterate around the same space? One of the proudest things that happened in the last week during the testing of the interoperability framework and the digital backbone was we used the HL7 FIRE standard, and it worked. So you might win some things, some you might need to build a bit more. You might have some losses here and there, and sometimes I think innovation is iterative. Nothing really works the first time. Well, I don't really make the tech, but I suppose there's a back and forth. So there has to be a balance. Most of the facilities at the county level, and I know this because I was once in charge of one of the facilities, our email was always medsouppokot@gmail.com. You know? But it worked. It's something that, you know, we wish we can develop the capacity and eventually change into something else. Some of the solutions we are looking to are so way out there that to start to build that capacity might be limiting. So where is the middle ground? And I know sometimes even some of the regulations and the frameworks we are trying to build can be very harsh. It's because we are trying to get it right. And part of the things that I like about the Digital Health Bill is that they're trying to create that regulatory framework in a consultative way, so that we hear from the actual users. We hear from different, just the same way we do things with patients and lived experiences. So I believe the space is quite open. I will in no way say government is perfect, but no one ever is. You have to start somewhere and we build going from there. Maybe we can take up that conversation from another point of view.
Thank you, Stephen. We want to welcome Alan to the panel. You're literally right on time, so I'll let you introduce yourself, and after you introduce yourself, I want you to jump straight into the conversation about the regulatory framework and the challenges that health tech companies are facing in terms of regulation. Yeah.
Thank you. I apologize for being late. I was told to be here earlier, but sorry about that. I'm a lawyer. I'm a partner at MMS Advocates. It's a firm made up of young lawyers. We practice in a lot of areas, tech being one of them. No, I know we are talking about health tech, but we practice across all tech areas. Now, the conversation about regulations, let me just give a general introduction, and then I can get into the details later. What we know is we have a lot of gaps. Regulations have been caught up with innovation. Innovation is happening at a pace which we are, as practitioners in law, we are struggling to keep up and trying to place startups and people who practice in that space. And what we do mostly is use what is there, make sure the line which does it say illegal, you're on that side. Where it is clearly illegal, then don't cross. Sometimes if you're stepping on it, it goes bad, we come to your aid and we try to talk to the regulators who listen to us and understand we are trying to help. So most tech guys want to push boundaries, want to go very fast. Regulation is not as fast, but I think it's catching up. Thank you for introducing me and for this opportunity to speak.
Okay, welcome. I want to move into the next segment, which is challenges in scaling. And I think from my experience speaking with investors personally, their biggest issue with African startups is they are not very confident of their ability to scale. So I would love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I would say there's a very interesting conversation about scaling, especially when you're talking to investors. And just like I said earlier, we've seen so many interesting innovations in Africa, developed by people who are not investment savvy. Maybe that's the wrong word to use there. But then you find that there are interesting innovations on the science side. But then if you look at the commercial side of the conversation, then you find they're not ready. They have not thought about the business model of the innovation, because how do you take it from the lab to the market, right? Have you thought about the numbers? What's your market like? How big is your market? And have you thought about what kind of partnerships have you? Do you need to have for you to actually go out there? So I think from the basic question of even looking for for funding to scale, you come in looking for $1 million, and the question is, why not 1.2? Why not 0.7? And you find that most times people just say some nice round figure like $1 million, right? So you find that a lot of times people haven't done in-depth analysis of their businesses, and I'm talking about, for example, financial modeling. So if you're looking for funding to scale, you need to demonstrate that you've actually thought about all the aspects of your business, from pricing to what's the cost structure like, what's the market like, what are the partnerships you need to actually get into. So I think if a startupper or an early stage entrepreneur can think through those aspects, it'll be so much easier to even to think about scale, right? And we got across fundraising, resourcing from a HR perspective and all those things.
Okay, Thank you very much. So from what I get from what you're saying is it's internal, the startup's inability to scale and not really external factors affecting them. Because I partially disagree with you on that. Yeah.
That's only one side. That's only one side. So there are so many internal factors that you need to take care of. Obviously, the external factors are also there, and one of them is legal regulation that we're talking about and things like that. But then, if you do not take care of your internal issues as a business, you might have the best external environment, but you still struggle to scale. So I would say, as much as there are so many external factors to think about, the internal ones are, I would say, the starting point. Yeah.
I can rope back to you, Alan. So I want you maybe to address the ethical considerations related to health tech, including data privacy, equity in healthcare access, and responsible use of AI in medical decision making. And anybody can jump in on this, by the way, because I know AI is a very popular thing happening right now. So just data privacy issues. Yeah.
Thank you. I know very little about AI, so I'll steer clear of that. Although I know AI is listening to us now, and after this, it will be suggesting medication for me to buy. Very scary stuff. So about the legal side, I think there's a lot to discuss on. Sorry, please repeat the question.
I was asking you about the ethical considerations, yeah.
Sorry about that. So the ethical considerations, especially on considering the Data Protection Act, which is very new, and how to handle data as health tech startups. We've worked with my friend Victor. I think he's part of the organizing team for this event, in setting up what they're trying to do, something to do with telemedicine and something to do with assisting patients while at home using tech. And one of the things which is key in handling such a setup is how do you deal with your data? There is law now. The Data Protection Act requires you to register according to the category where you fall under. There are different considerations, one of them being size, income, number of staff, and what have you. So as a startup, what is key for you is from the get-go, you need to have systems on how you handle data. When you receive data, who has access to the data, who receives this data, and who stores it, who retrieves it, who has what level of access. Now, part of the consideration comes from the Constitution. The Constitution guarantees all of us a right to privacy, and as a patient, that is paramount. It's almost as sacred as a lawyer and patient, and a lawyer and client confidentiality is the same thing with doctor and patient. So that becomes the foundation stone for how you set up your systems. And the easy thing to do, I like to use scenarios. So let's say you are, am I allowed to mention names? Okay, is Zuri in the house? No? Okay, let me not mention. So let's say you are ex. Zuri Health is here. Do you have permission to? I can? Okay, so what's your name just in case it comes up? Daisy. So Daisy has allowed me to use Zuri Health as a good example. So Zuri Health, let me work with you on the your client experience journey. So I come to Zuri Health, I come to a reception. I say I want to, so you ask me, what brings you here? I say, my stomach, I'm feeling queasy, what is it? I'm walked to some place, there's a form I'm supposed to fill. Nothing is explained to me that you're filling this form, this information is going to be used for ABCD, and we'll store it this way, and what have you. So I fill in the form, date of birth, sex. I don't know. These days, sex is a very heated topic, but mostly you find male, female. I think we're getting there to the other spaces. I have no opinion on it. You find other information. So where my residence, my place of work, what I do, so many details. So you fill that form. The first one who fills it is the person at the receptionist. You leave it there, you go to triage. Triage comes, they put those things on you, they check your level of oxygen, your BP, your what. That information goes again to a different place. So that's the nurse. You've left the reception. In fact, even before you go there, there's an annoying insurance guy who will come ask you whether you're paying cash or insurance. So if it's insurance, then you have another headache. So already that's form number 3, yeah? Reception, where you fill your date of birth, register. Triage is before insurance. So second is insurance. You fill the form, insurance number, age, member, contributor, all those things. Then third is triage. Now they check your health information. Before you get to the doctor, we've counted how many forms? Those who are paying attention. 3, 3 forms. So all this information is taken by different people. At Zuri, I don't know if they have systems on bringing it all together so that if there's a file for Alan Mzungu, it will be, the form at the reception will be on that file. The form from triage will go to that file. The doctor's notes and everything else will go to that file. Then it goes into a storage where there's a system who accesses it and who can't. Now we also have this information digitally, where you walk the same journey and it's filled in digitally. Now after you leave that place, when you come again, surprising thing is you think all this information is there and you don't need to go through again, but voila, you start again with the insurance guy. And I don't know why they can't get more friendly guys to do that job, but or ladies. So anyway, so for now, the Data Protection Act is very nascent, and what we are being sensitized to do as organizations, including myself as a lawyer and as a law firm, is to make systems, first register if you are registrable, and then 2, make systems. Because right now, I bet if I go to Zuri Health and I've walked that journey, my form will be accessible to anyone who can access whatever my file is, or anyone who can access that system. So first is you set categories of data. There's very limited guidelines as to what data should be accessible to who, but you as a business should be able to make a judgment call and put hierarchies where you protect your client information. 2, you find systems where if I'm not happy anymore, if you're not happy anymore with your data being at Zuri Health, I can request for that data to be deleted or to be redacted or to be whatever it is. Most places you find that's not there. So for tech startups or any startups we're working with, beyond the information which is exciting for investors, like you have your checklist for all your records and what you're required to do, your corporate information. Now you need to have a checklist for complying with the data protection and systems to be able to be up to date every time you're working on your innovation. I think I've spoken enough. I can pass this to someone else.
1, 2.
We're running out of time, so we can 1 minute. Tom, if you can.
I want to take the question on responsible use of AI in medical decision making. So, and I want us to discuss a few studies that I've come across. I don't know if I'm audible enough. Okay. So you see, every time a new technology emerges, there is fear. There is fear of taking up jobs. There is fear of taking over the world. We remember we saw that with computers. We saw that again with the internet. And now again, we are seeing it with AI. And probably that's why this question is there. So what are we doing in terms of, as innovators, to ensure responsible innovation in terms of AI? I was reading a research by OECD. It's Organization for Economic Development. It's a 38-member bloc, consists mostly of wealthy nations, but some developing economies too. They said AI is likely to take 27% of jobs. And they specified sectors, especially in law, medicine, and engineering. That is what OECD highlighted. But I don't think it's anytime soon. So what AI would do will make some jobs redundant. it's like how computers made some jobs redundant, how the internet made some jobs redundant, but also created new opportunities. They created new, better. I think they even created better jobs, and we probably all would not be here if why not for these technologies. But we have a study by Goldman Sachs that said AI has the potential to improve 300 million jobs. So you can compare the two studies. So because we'll need new data scientists, we'll need new careers in the field, we'll need to incorporate technology and specifically AI in everything that we'll do. And I believe that is what we need to be able to improve the healthcare sector, to be able to improve diagnosis, to be able to improve the law sector. You might forget something you learned in school, but if you have a technology that reminds you, this is actually what I did 2 weeks ago, this is what I did 2 years ago, this is what I went, this is how I approached this issue 2 years ago, that would be amazing. So I believe it has a good potential. So
thank you. We're running out of time, but I just want to add on to what you said. So I was recently a speaker at the Kenya Cardiac Society conference. It's about for cardiologists, and artificial intelligence took up the entire conference, speaking a very heated debate about the replacement of jobs, because AI is being used a lot in cardiology for ECG and echocardiogram readings. So it was very important, but I think I like what you've said, that yes, it's making certain jobs redundant, like cardiac nurses, for example. But it is definitely, if we look at patient outcomes, you cannot even compare. Like, for example, on ECG reading, they were finding that AI is almost 100% accurate. But the average cardiologist reading on ECG is reading maybe at like a 70% accuracy level. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, Stephen, thank you.
Yeah, well, I know this is very strange to have a government officer speaking on AI. But we are there, we're in the conversation. And I think the use cases for AI are, like you've heard, they're numerous. And just to speak to that, I saw patients getting ECG services read off cloud in Marsabit about 2 weeks ago, in a place where there's no cardiologist, and there won't be one anytime soon. So the use case for that already has been shown. I like to deviate a little bit outside of the clinical context when I think of AI. What's the role of AI in insurance? What's the role of AI in the non-clinical components of the health sector? And I think I attended a summit yesterday where, we're talking about process automation and, robotic things, and there's quite a bit of space to wiggle in that sort of sphere without necessarily having the negative ramifications or perceptions of AI. And just to think about where we are headed as a government in our direction, primary healthcare networks are actually the biggest scale that you can think of currently in the country. If you can scale to that level, I believe you can go anywhere. And if you can find a better way of doing things, be it AI, I think the world is yours for the taking. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. So I think just because of time, I want to open up the floor, please, for questions. Thank you very much for listening to us. So maybe now we can hear from some of you, if you have any questions.
Oh, yeah. So
Okay.
I think first I'd like to appreciate the panelists and the moderator for a very elaborate discussion. And probably just to make a few comments on what I have caught, to at least give you the incentive that we have been listening. Alan came in with a very strong point, especially when he talked about the fact that the legal framework will certainly not evolve at a pace that will catch up with technology. And just before that, Dr. Mutiso had mentioned about the things that government has done. I think give credit to the government in terms of the attempts to put place certain frameworks, the data policy, the Data Protection Act, now the Digital Health Bill, the interoperability framework, and all those good things. And as I was thinking on what Tom from Neurolabs gave as his experiences, and our moderator, Dr. Alice, as well, from Aurora Health, I was thinking about the role of advocacy. Because oftentimes, like Dr. Mutiso mentioned, for them to move faster as government, as regulators, partnerships with the private sector will be very critical. And those partnerships will not necessarily come only when we, as private sector, we are offering solutions or offering funding. It could also be offering ideas on sort of how to improve those legal frameworks. When those bills are on the floor of whatever forum, we fully take advantage of the constitutional provision for public participation, and not just at the invitation of government, but pushing and agitating for it as a private sector player, innovator, entrepreneur. Because it is only through that private sector will contribute to at least the legal framework, the innovators will contribute to the legal framework or whatever framework in place that governs the industry, at least catching up with the speed with which ideas are coming up. There's something that has been talked about AI, and listening very keenly to our keynote speaker, she did mention that sub-Saharan Africa or low and middle income countries broadly now account for 27% of disease burden, especially from non-communicable diseases. And then there was also comments made, and Dr. Mutiso has touched a bit on it in some way, on the paucity of human resources for health. In fact, for me, I honestly, and I appreciate Dr. Alice, what you mentioned, that AI was a key point of discussion at the Kenya Cardiac Society Congress. I see it as a positive because AI will help us to bridge the big gap between availability of resources for health, human capital-wise, and the great demand there is for those health services. Best case scenario, like Dr. Mutiso says, like the use case proof that in a place where there's no cardiologist, we can actually get an opportunity for a cardiac patient to get a diagnosis and increase their chances of survival by timeliness of intervention. I really liked what was mentioned by Vilgro, and Mwada did bring it out very clearly, that in Africa there are more, there's more money, there's more capital chasing good ideas than there is good ideas chasing capital. And very profound statement. I thought about, again, to fintech. Is it that we as innovators are looking to innovate at the top, where there's already a lot of clamor for space to access that capital? Are we looking at taking our innovations right to the patient, right to the population, right to the user? Because when we look at it that way, then there are endless possibilities in terms of demand for those services. When we look at what is it that my innovation can do to empower the patient, I did mention that at the beginning, empower the population to increase their healthcare seeking behavior, for them to be empowered more. And when Mr. Mzungu was speaking, I think it shows how sometimes the health system is set up in a way that it does not empower the patient. So it is the role of health tech innovation to disrupt very innovatively, very compliantly again, what the system is, and make sure that it is as patient-centric as possible. And when it comes to the players in the industry, then make sure that it works for each and every of those players, be it the service provider or the bigger players like government, like multilateral institutions, healthcare financing organizations. And I believe in that way, then we will have as many ideas, good ideas, chasing good capital, so that this really creates then an opportunity for us to have a sustainability to the health tech innovations that come on, because then they will be addressing real issues, meeting unquenchable demand. And in that way, I think we'll definitely form good ideas for everybody to invest in. So my question, what do we think with that proof that as your audience we were paying attention, what do we think is the role of advocacy? And I speak this keenly interested these days in health diplomacy, of bringing together. I know HealthTech Hub has done this very well, but from an advocacy point of view, so that we sensitize each other of the opportunity, challenge. And I like the way Mr. Tom was throwing good jabs at Dr. Mutiso together. And I like Dr. Mutiso for the fact that you said that the political will within government is now sort of very strongly inclined towards paving the way for the growth and development of health tech innovations. So what is it that we can be done from an advocacy point of view so that we can raise the awareness of the concerned regulators, so that Dr. Alice from Aurora Health, Mr. Tom from Neurolabs will not experience the kind of challenge that they have experienced as health startups in interacting with the system that is supposed to enable the birth of their idea into the market for adoption. Just, I think, just randomly to the entire panel, and now I'm even converting the moderator to one of the panelists. Thank you.
I'm going to say something very short. Thank you so much. You definitely listen to everything. For me, the role of advocacy, I think there's so much miscommunication happening, and that's why when Dr. Mutiso speaks, I appreciate the role of the government from the top, putting out these guidelines. We see them in the summits, we see them in the conferences speaking, but like I said, on the ground, I wish there was more trickle-down effect of this information, maybe, just like at a grassroots level of the staff of the Ministry of Health,
Yeah, I want to talk about the voice of the innovator, because I think that's a critical area. And if you look at the innovation landscape, you see that there are so many fragmented efforts happening across the continent. So you find a person doing this thing in Kenya, and someone else doing exactly the same thing in Uganda, Tanzania, like that. And there's no connection and there's no visibility across the board. I feel hubs like this will come in handy to actually create convergence where these voices can actually come together. And when these voices come together, I think we'll have a bigger voice. And that would be to make it much easier to lobby governments, and the other, the regulators in the landscape. So I think with such a huge disease burden and such a huge underserved market, I think that convergence and that collaboration on the innovation side by the players will create a bigger impact. And I don't see it like competition. If you have your company in Kenya and someone else is in Uganda or Zambia, they are doing exactly the same thing. I think if you come together, you find that you have a better line of sight of what's happening on the continent and who you need to talk to. And now when you speak, you'll have a bigger voice. So I think it's about consolidation and collaboration.
I think that is a very poignant place to bring this conversation to Dr. Muti. And I'd like to just wear my non-communicable disease hat for a minute or two, whereby preventative medicine, and even we have a business case as recent as a few months ago that shows for every $1 you spend on preventative medicine, you save 22 for the health system. And intuitively we know that prevention is better than curative sort of modalities in many ways. One of the key things that we have in the NCD space as our key tools to push this message out is advocacy is the biggest, strongest weapon we have in the fight against a rising burden of non-communicable disease. But what do we notice about the NCD space? There is some level of inequity in terms of, for that level of disease burden, which is now 41% of mortality in Kenya and 50% of morbidity, we don't get the resources or the attention that our colleagues and comrades who work in the communicable disease space sort of get. We do appreciate our partners in sectors that deal with malaria, TB, HIV, and you see those programs have such levels of advocacy out that they just speak for themselves. Why don't we push a little bit more of these resources that seem to be ring-fenced for those three conditions into the newest kid on the block, which is digital health and its innovation? Just a thought. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yes. My name is Franco Nyambu. I have a comment that it's not necessarily just to the panelists, but I think it is all of us. So first of all is I come from the education sector. I teach in a university, and I sort of stumbled on the invite online to be here, and I'm very excited about the discussions that we are having. So it's just a thought. Will it make sense to include training institutions more in such conversations? Because I think they're a huge catchment area for innovators. These young people who are taking engineering courses, for example, I come from a university where we offer BSc in health records. I think it will be a great catchment area for digital health, just a thought. Then the second part of my comment has to do with my understanding of innovations and technology. It might be broader than a lot of the discussions we hear in general. Could we think outside digital health? Not throw it out, but if we're talking about health system, we're talking about commodities, we're talking about medicines, we're talking about lab tests, and I think these are areas that we should also think about when in not necessarily only such forums, but even as funders, as global funder here. We saw during COVID we were importing ear tests that, to be honest, could have been done very easily if we allowed people to do those. But now we have to buy these CE IVD marked tests that are marked up ridiculously, and we were sending a lot of foreign exchange out there. So just food for thought, not necessarily just for the panelists, but it will be nice to hear comments back for those who are not from the digital space. Thank you very much.
Yes, hello, good evening. My name is Eric. Just one comment or two. I hope I can be heard. Yeah. So I want to sympathize with my dear friend Tom, who has been battered by the health system. In so many ways, but mine is a word of encouragement because we've been on this journey with the Ministry of Health now for 7 years. And that's where we started from where you are today. Okay. Yeah, so we have been on that journey, Tom, for the past 7 years, trying to work with the health system, government, and usually there's no clarity in government. And I say this very boldly, knowing that Dr. Mutiso is seated next to you. But I would want to encourage you that many startups, innovators have walked that path before. And I want to also say that one of the challenges that we have as startups and innovators is we are usually very excited with our innovations, and we typically forget about who are we innovating for and who is the stakeholder, who eventually along the journey you're going to interact with. Let me also say that the government is a very, very jealous institution. So when you innovate and you are already running and you do not involve them, then they would ask you, so where were you all this time? So my encouragement in this forum today is, and this is also a challenge to HealthTech Hub, on two fronts. Let us allow our innovators to stay close to the government. Let us also have a very strong advocacy, as Dr. Muiti had mentioned, within HealthTech Hub. And the reason why I'm saying this is last week, for the same health innovation, we had certain challenges and we went to see the new PS. And the PS was asking us, so if you guys have had all these challenges all this time, and you guys were quiet, so how do you expect us to know what is happening, right? So as HealthTech Hub, on behalf of all the innovators, we need to champion some of those advocacy agendas. And as startups, let's think about the government from the word go as we design some of these solutions. And then lastly, naturally, as private sector, we'll always move ahead, way ahead of government in terms of policy, in terms of regulation. That is how the ecosystem is structured. But let's try as much as possible. And I'll share an example of what we've gone through. So a couple of 2 years back, because right now we are implementing a digital health solution that is linking community with primary health care, focusing on non-communicable diseases, diabetes, hypertension, mental health, and really focused on longitudinal management of patients, but with a strong component of patient engagement. And when we were scaling up this solution in the last 2 years, one of the heads of directorate told us that you guys were running very fast. You are running very fast, and we were watching you. Now, fortunately, now fortunately, you are coming back. And the issues then were around AWS, as you've mentioned, Tom, which ideally, cloud servers ideally are the most convenient, safer, and it makes sense for real-time, data solutions. But the government talks about on-prem, servers, data has to be in-house and all that. But we have been able to, through advocacy, to walk through the path. It's painful, but we walked through the path, and today we have been able to migrate data from AWS to National Data Center, which is also a very painful process, very costly, and we have actually published a manuscript right now on data migration in Kenya. So we can actually talk, Tom, and if I had a balm, I would have soothed your your stress. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Mine is short. My name is Dr. Maya. I'm a good friend of Mwiti over there and Steve, same school and a lot of same industry. My first encouragement is to all the healthcare startup tech geniuses in the room. I've worked in medicine for like the last 10 years as a doctor, and I have done management and also pharma, and also now I'm also in the healthcare startup. The word of encouragement is that there's a lot of problems, right? And where there are problems, there's solutions, and where there's solutions, Steve will say there's money. But let's solve the solution. Health, many people misunderstand health to mean government. I hear everyone is talking, but we need to mention the patient, right? Forget about everything. Without the patients, there's no hospitals. I mean, we wouldn't even be meeting here. We'd probably be meeting for a lawyer to give us advice on something, So let's not always talk and leave out the patient, right? I'll give a case example of why I really like what he says. Yeah? In the data we currently have, we find that almost 58% of patients are getting their prescriptions directly from the pharmacy without even a doctor, reviewing the patient. It means either two things, that the doctor wrote a prescription or the patient is doctoring themselves, right? So there are real big pertinent issues. 58% is huge, and that's just in your space, hypertension, right? It means, and this is only in the private sector, so it means that patients are not going to see the doctor, in quotes. They are going to see other doctors that my friend will call AI doctors or Google doctors. And you see that in the last frame that AI actually made mistakes by referencing documents that are not authenticated or validated by anyone, because it's a language model, right? It knows no better, right? So I really like what you said, that we need to focus on one problem, solve it. And in this room, we have many solvers of many problems, right? So the space is really large. the other thing was to merge what you're saying, automation versus AI, right? And I'll give a very simple example. If you've automated something, you create what is called automation laziness, right? If you have taken the lift here, your likelihood of meeting Dr. Steve in the NCD department is very high. Because with automation, we are becoming more and more dependent on you to become NCD, right? So the prevention there is not just the drugs, yeah? But the way we live our life, right? The other thing is that you'd notice that Kenya used to be an acute drug-dominated market, right? So all the antibiotics, antifungals, all these antivirals. But as per this year, we are seeing that the highest burden is NCD, right? You'll find that even pharma are moving towards NCD, and some are even selling their antibiotic franchises, right? We are moving towards a most European style of disease burden, Mr. Epidemiologist will tell you. And this has brought about a lot of problems, especially when it comes to the laziness in automation. We are depending on patients to take their own BPs and send to you, which is wrong. Then why did you go to school, right? And in the latest even EAC guidelines, we're talking about going back to the old method of measuring blood pressure, because the automated machines are giving errors of up to 5 to 10, right? Millimeters of mercury on hypertension, right? They're not able to diagnose if you have isolated systolic. The systolic is the top one, right? So people are walking around with diseases, in quotes, that are undiagnosed. They are not followed up by doctors. They are not on the right treatment. With the errors in machines, probably you've been put on, you know how much 5 millimeters is just enough to call you a hypertensive patient, right? What if you are not actually a hypertensive patient and you've been put on medications for the last 5 years, right? So there's also these errors in machines, these errors in AI, and I want my friend in Neurolabs to tell us what would be your best solution towards mitigation of this. Everyone is running for funding and all that, but let's talk about the patient at large, right? Thank you.
Should I speak?
We take that. So thank you very much for the insights. I believe that some of you should have been seated here and some of us listening to you, because you have so much wealth of knowledge in this space. So in terms of the question that has been directed to me, I would say it takes time. AI is still at its cusp. We all know about AI technologies like ChatGPT and how they are taking over the world. But it's still at its very early stage. And that's why we have regulatory frameworks to help us regulate automations. That's why we have FDA and HIPAA to help us regulate any other technology that we are building. So I would say give it time. See, if I told my grandfather 10 years ago that he doesn't need to go home every weekend to bring money, that he'd use M-Pesa, he would have told me that is a lie. So that's where we are now. So you're saying that's a lie. AI or automation can never work. But if we give it more data, so probably you're more experienced than the technologies around. So you have more experience. So you have more data. So what happens if we feed our technology data for over 20 years? They become better, they become more conversant, they become even a guiding tool, just as how banks are using M-Pesa for their daily transactions. So I would say it's still at its cusp, it's still at its early stages. AI, long story short, AI is the future, we cannot wish it away. But that doesn't mean we won't have jobs or there won't be mistakes, there will be, but with time and data, that will be a problem of the past, probably a decade or two from now.
I wanted to address the guy who asked about the role of education. I think that's very important. You had mentioned that university students are not being properly maybe being given a sandbox for innovation. And I'd like to take it a step further and also mention that yes, we're creating solutions for patients, but don't forget, that the people who are using this technology are clinicians as well. And they actually showed that 70% of nurses could not use a certain solution that had been brought by an American company I want to mention. They could not use it because of very limited digital literacy. So we need to really incorporate nursing students, medical students in all this like health technology and digital literacy as well. I think we have one more question. Victor, is it okay? From her, yeah. I think the final question.
We can do one more question and then go.
Okay. Yeah.
Should I go? Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Jennifer. I am the co-founder at Stawi Global. We are a mental health company that focuses on caregivers. So I have 3 questions. First of all, thank you to the panel for all the insights that you've shared. I have 3 questions, and the first one is for the lawyer, Mzungu. With mental health, it's a very sensitive topic. It's a very sensitive field in general. So what are some pieces of advice or some laws and regulations you think a mental health company such as mine should have at the back of our minds, even as we innovate, as we build these digital platforms? What are some things that we should have at the back of our minds, even if they have not yet caught up with us? The second question is for Mutiso, which is, Dr. Mutiso, apologies, which is, again, as a mental health company, and here in Kenya, there's a lot of pettiness, I'm gonna call it pettiness, among mental health providers and the industry at large. It's like, I am a psychiatrist, psychologist, step aside. I am a psychologist, somebody with a diploma, please step aside. You need to bow and kiss the ring, yeah? And then there's all these other small organizations or even big organizations that have been there for years, and they are trying to regulate the field itself. And so when you are talking about the places where we need to be aware, we need to be regulated, we need to go to this place and register our businesses. As a mental health service provider in a digital space, it's very possible for me to just like step back and be like, I'm gonna innovate in secret and just distribute my products very secretly through WhatsApp groups and links. But that is not something that I look forward to doing, because integrity is a big deal for our company. So my question is, what are some of these bodies that we should be looking at so that we can register our businesses and not just register them, but to make sure that these bodies know who we are and what we do and why we do it and how we can actually serve the country, how we can serve Africa, global, yeah? So what are these bodies that we need to have at the back of our minds, and how do we transcend those inner wrangles? So KCPA is telling me I should register my business as a training institution or a service provider, but then I'm also registered as a counselor because I am a therapist, and then I have to register the business, and then I have to register this other thing. Where does it end, and what should I have at the back of my mind as I'm thinking about innovating in the digital space as a mental health provider? My last question is for Mwatha. I'm pronouncing your name correctly, yeah? Yeah, so we were discussing with my friend here, Monica, and she's from Sasa Doctor, and we're just wondering about all these companies that are shutting down. So it's a startup, you start, you're doing your thing, and then you go, you get funding, you get 2 billion injected into your business, you're like, yay, and then you get a fancy office, MacBooks, everybody's living large. And then 6 months down the line, the company shuts down. So my question is, how, as a mental health startup, how do I not become that statistic? Because I want to be here for the next 50 years, and I want my business to go beyond Kenya, to go into every East African country, and to go across Africa, and to go global. I want Stawi Global to be the #1 answer that comes to people's minds when they think about caregivers. So how do I not become the statistic even after I get money, because I'm looking to raise at some point? Yeah, what are your thoughts about all those questions?
I go first. All right. Thank you for those questions. Well thought out, well articulated, and actually triggers a lot of analysis from my side. So I will just share with you what I know. I don't know everything, but I know quite a bit. Now, as you think about your innovation, as you do your business, first thing is systems. A lot of us now have systems for accounting, have systems for scaling, getting ready for investors and what have you. But your first systems, also you have to have data protection, compliance as part of what you're thinking about. The cost that come with it, because if you're going to go global, international, all that space you want to get into, you need to have people who take care of that space as a full-time job. So a data protection officer within your organization is something key. You need to think of training and budgets for training. It should be part of your normal onboarding and induction for your staff. On data protection, you need to think about, as part of the systems, who needs to access what data. So classify your data, what is basic, that maybe everyone can access, a name and a patient number. The rest of the information, what this patient came here to do, what was the diagnosis, what was the medication given. That may be just a doctor and person in pharmacy. So those things need to be in place. Sorry, I was taking notes as you asked. Then you need to understand there's a lot of inadequacies in the law and also ridiculous provisions which are very colonial. For instance, the space you're in, mental health, we still have people called imbeciles, according to the law. We still have lunatics, we still have a lot of those things criminalized. So I don't know what kind of praxis yours is. I want to engage with you more, but it's a space where you can be very frustrated because the law does not recognize that those are illnesses. They have offenses existing to death, almost as we know attempted suicide is an offense, yeah? But that should not be the case. It makes the problem larger than smaller. So that space needs a lot of advocacy so that we communicate to, I don't want to use the word power, but we communicate to those people who are better placed to make these regulations so that they understand, because there's a saying which says the wearer of the shoe knows where it pinches. So if you're in that space, then we don't need to have, no offense to people who call themselves consultants, who come and get big contracts to consult on a certain issue, which gets into policy, and the people on ground don't have the information in there. So you need to be proactive. There are spaces where you can contribute to you can make your contribution to the laws and the policies as they're developed. I can engage more with you on that. There's a lot of that, but just a short one is, when bills are being debated at every stage, there's room to make a contribution. The most effective way is to do a memo. Sit down, list the issues you have with the legislation which is being discussed, suggest even wording for what you think needs to change under what has been drafted currently, and deliver that to the Secretariat or wherever it is the bill is being discussed. You have a better chance of that getting into the law when you do that, as opposed to attending a baraza, a session where people are just, all of them angry. Serikali, tunataka serikali, tunataka serikali. And at the end of it, the people who've come to take comments have only rated tunataka serikali. So all the key things which needed to go into the law don't get there. And that's a space I'm also passionate about, and I'll give you my card, we engage more.
Thank you. We've run out of time, but I will give you 30 seconds to answer. I know she asked both of you, please, but it just...
Yeah, so very quickly, I think there's an epidemic in town of startups failing. If you read the news, there's also a new one that raised $5 million a couple of months ago, and it failed. So what I'm going to say, I had someone use the word pitchpreneurship the other day. You could be a very good fundraiser, you get funded, but then the word here is execution. And what I'm going to say is that when you get funded, the first thing is systems. You must be able to track what you're doing, In a pitch deck, you have that section that you call uses of funds. Are you actually staying the course? Because I've seen so many startups having pivots after pivots after getting funded. So you find that you keep changing what you're doing every 3-6 months. So what happens is that in 1 or 2 years, you're out of funds, and you don't have anything to demonstrate what you have done with the money. So you can't even raise a second round of funding. And that's why you fail. So I think you need to have a bit of staying power. It's good to pivot, because if it's not working, it's not working. You must change it. But then there's a very tricky balance there, because if you pivot too much, then you're going to do too many little things, and at the end of it, you can't show any traction. So I would say the last thing here is also integrity, because we've seen people getting funded and buying apartments and buying big cars in town. So I think that's an unsaid truth, which is actually a reality in town. So yeah, summarize that. I don't know if that helps. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. So I think this is a very interesting question because whenever you're in doubt, the law pronounces itself explicitly. And the Mental Health Act was amended last year. It was amended last year. And in one of the provisions, it actually defines that each of the healthcare practitioners is defined and has their regulatory framework that matches them. So as long as you fit in within the rules of your training and regulatory body, I do not see any reason why you should have fights that cannot be resolved. I do understand that it has been tricky. Wakili has mentioned that there are a lot of gray areas, but I took part in the amendments towards that process, and the fights were even more intense. However, it is clear, it is well set out. I think we might need to sit down with Wakili and go over that. But I think where we are now, the psychiatrists are moderated by the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Act, medical officers as well. The counselors have their own act, nurses have one. So there's actually good provisions and very clear sort of governance set out. Maybe we'll take that up a little bit in the plenary session. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I have two sets of news, good news and bad news. The bad news is we have to end the panel session because we're running out of time. The good news is after this, we have a networking session where you can pick out who you want to engage and you can have more elaborate conversations. So if you have a ton of questions, don't scrap them off, just keep them. We'll definitely address them during the networking session. So at this point, I want to thank my panel for all those awesome insights. Haven't they been good? Yes. Let's give them a clap. I want to thank my panel for all the work that they've done, all the insights they've given us. But at this juncture, I want us to go for a 5-minute break because I also understand it's been quite intense and heavy. And then when we come back, we'll have a short session led by Jackson. This is now geared towards startups because the conversation has been now around government policy and how to integrate. So now we'll have a session where he'll just take the startups now, how you need to pitch, how you need to present yourself to the venture capitalists and investors. And then afterwards, we'll have some of the startups within the program just introducing themselves for 2-3 minutes. And then now we head to the networking session. So for now, 5-minute break, and then you're back. Thank you. Okay, let's settle down. Hello, let's settle down. Let's finish the session. Okay, let's settle down. Hello? I need us to settle down for the last session. Hello? Okay, we are starting our session. Hello? Hello? Please, let's settle down. Let's take our seats kindly so that we finish up. Hello? Are we ready for the next session? Hello, I hear no responses. Are we ready for the next session? Awesome. So we are starting our next session. Let's settle down. Awesome, thank you. So, thank you. So we are starting our next session. It's a very short session. So for the next 30 minutes, because I know we're also running, we are running late on time. For the next 30 minutes, I want us to do it this way. I want us to collaborate and ensure that we make the most of what we have left. So for the next 15 minutes, Jackson from Vilgro Africa will be leading us through a session on how to pitch. So this is more or less geared towards startups, how to talk to investors and all of that. If you have any questions for him, as much as I would like to give you guys an opportunity to ask them, I'll say take them down. We'll have a networking session afterwards at the balcony, at the deck. And then after that, we have a few startups from the program within the room. And also people, let's move forward. I see the backbenchers, so let's move forward, thank you. So after that, we have a few startups within and from the program who have gone through the program. They've been able to experience the HealthTech Hub, and they can give us some insights on how it is. So also just because of time, I'd like to give them like 3 to 4 minutes each, just to introduce themselves, the innovations, what they're working on, so that also the rest of the audience can get to know about them, and also just also to facilitate the conversations that will be happening during the networking session. So, are we good? Awesome. So at this point, please, Jackson, karibu tena. Jackson said before he's an impact investor, works with Vilgro Africa, but it has also been part of the panel, but I'll let him lead this session. Thank you.
Just give us some 2 minutes setting up the presentation. I have some very few slides, only 5 slides, so I won't be too long. Perfect. So how to pitch? I'll break it down in a very simple format. I don't take you down the road of a very academic session. So I just want to show you a few key things you need to have in your pitch deck, right? So I'd rather see the slides on the screen than see myself. Perfect. Great. So the first question is, what's your bullseye when you're pitching? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? And the purpose of your pitch should be to create investor interest or investor appetite for your deal, because more often than not when you're pitching to investors, they've never seen you before, they've never heard of your business before. So you want to use your 5 or 10 minutes, just making sure that you generate that interest, that appetite from investors. So now I just want to break this into four parts. If you forget anything I say, just remember 4 things: the why, the what, the how, and the ask. Right? So your pitch deck, when you have 5 minutes to present or 10 minutes to present, you must cover those 4 things. There's the why, there is the what, and there is the how, there's the ask. So at the very top of your pitch deck, there's this little section here called the executive summary. Now, one thing I'll say is that this is a very important section. Just to give you an example, for a busy investor, you find that for every 100 decks they look at, they probably only end up investing in 5 of those deals, right? So it means that someone reading your first 3 to 5 slides informs if they're going to read the rest of your deck or not, right? So you want to have as much as possible in very few words in the first like 2 or 3 slides of your presentation. So here, what you cover a summary of your business, who owns the business, like, you know, what's the idea, what's the big idea, you know, what's your also innovation. At times you also have to give a bit of legal information, where are you based, you know, legal team. This is not very common in most pitch decks, but for the bigger investor memos, you might find some of this information. But the critical part of this is, what's your idea? You know, what's your team looking like in brief? Like, what's awesome about your team? This is not where you put the mug shots and, you know, and bio notes. This is just, you know, just a small statement of what makes your team awesome, right? And then traction to date. And traction could look like revenues to date, if it's a clinic or a healthcare, you know, a solution. How many patients do you see in a month? You know, what can you say about your profitability? Just in brief, nothing much. And then a summary of your roadmap is very important. Sometimes here we just put a simple timeline diagram just to show the journey you have come so far, right? And then the ask. On the ask, I usually recommend, for example, if you're looking for an equity investment, now here's where you put something about your pre-money evaluation, right? So the ask will depend on what instrument you're looking for. You don't just say you are looking for $1 million. Is that debt? Is that equity? Is that a convertible note? Is that a safe? It needs to come out in that section, right? So one thing to remember is that you do this section last. So after you do your the why, and the what and the how and the ask, then you do this last section to summarize everything. The why is the first question. Why are you doing what you're doing? Like, what's the motivation? Like, what's the problem you're trying to solve? You know, what are the pain points? Why do we need your business in the market, right? So this is where you clearly articulate the problem, use data, use real examples of how your business is creating impact. So this is a very important section, and don't make it too boring with a lot of data and a lot of text. You know, make use of visuals, you know, charts, graphs, you know, images and things like that. Make it interesting to look at. Be a storyteller, you know. Try to connect the problem and your solution, right? And why you're the best person to deliver that solution. That's the why. Now, the what is what's your business, right? So this, I would say, is the heaviest section of your pitch deck, because you want to articulate what your business model is, right? So what's your idea? What's the model? Like, how do you? I'm very sure you're familiar with the business model canvas. You know, those couple of questions that are in that one. So the question here is, what's your business? What's your market, right? You know, you must have come across the total addressable market. You know, those 3 circles. Like, what market are you addressing, right? So if you say that Kenya has 50 million people today, you may not say that your market is 50 million people, right? So you must understand, do you have a niche market? What market are you targeting? And how are you going to actually reach that market? You know, and how are you structured as a business? What's your governance structure? This is also where you talk about your traction and impact. Now, your financial model here will come in very handy, because this is where the numbers come in, right? So if you're, for example, 5 years old, you want to show the last 3 years of your business. What does the revenue look like over the last 3 years? What do the margins look like? You know, gross profit margin, EBITDA, and things like that. This is why you also talk about your impact. How many lives you are changing? You know, how many people have you reached? How many companies have you supported? If you're an incubator like Vilgrow, you know, if you're a healthcare you know, startup, like how many patients have you reached so far? What impact are you creating? You want to illustrate that you actually know how to capture your impact and how to measure it, and you can actually illustrate that very well. So, like I said, the easiest way to talk about your business story is using a timeline diagram, because you want to say you are founded in 2015, In 2017, you got a co-founder. You got your seed round in 2018. You know, you did your Series A in 2020. You want to show that in a very easy way to follow. Use ratios here. You know, use ratios and charts and numbers. I don't like tables particularly because they can look busy and technical. You know, be creative about how you present your numbers. That's the what. Now, the how is the next thing. In terms of the how is, how are you going to execute this business model? So you've shown your idea, you understand the market, here's your solution, how do you deliver? So here now your team becomes very important. And now here, what I recommend, because you might have a big team, you might have like 4 co-founders and like 10 guys working for you. You don't want to have 4 slides full of guys, right? So you want to have like the first slide, the 3-4 main people have the key profiles. What have they done with their lives? Other than just saying they have an MBA in management. What have they done which is relevant to your business? It's really good to bring out. And then the other guys, you may just have a sentence here and there. Have some nice headshots there. I like white backgrounds or clear backgrounds, especially unless you're in tech, because the tech guys like to put interesting images there, which are fine. Sometimes, yeah. Show your board. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because if you're a lean startup, if you're only 3 guys, you might find that your slide won't look very interesting and very robust. So if you have a board of advisors, actually that's how you put it. That's the how. Now, on your ask, like I said, be very clear what you're looking for when you're talking to investors, right? So, are you looking for debt? Are you looking for equity? Are you looking for convertible note? Are you looking for venture debt? Are you looking for a safe? Be very particular about that. Now, one thing I must say I have seen as a trend for early stage, there's an increasing appetite for safes and convertible notes, mostly because of the valuation issue, right? Because if you're only 2 years old, how do you value your business, right? So there's so many models out there, the slicing pie model, there are all these DCF models, the EV sales, EV EBITDA, the whole science about valuation. Now, the problem is, if you're only 2 years old, you're pre-revenue, you're pretty positive EBITDA, then how do you value your business? So you might find that it's much easier for you to kick that a little bit further down the road and have an instrument that gives you time to build your business, which is why at times I would recommend a safe, if you're not sure about how to value your business, or a convertible note, right? So that's the ask. So those are the 4 things that are very critical to having your pitch deck. The why are you doing your business? Why is it effective? And then the what's your business like? What's your business model? What are your numbers like? What's your impact thesis? And then the how do you execute? What partnerships do you have? What does your team look like? And then the ask, be very clear what you're looking for. And that's my presentation. So the last slide here is on the do's and don'ts. Very, very quick examples of what you need to do and what you need to avoid in your pitch deck. So what you must do is practice your pitch. Have your pitch at your fingertips. Don't keep on doing what I'm doing, looking at the slides, right? Yeah. Have your numbers. If someone comes asking, what's your EBITDA margin for that year of your projection, have a good idea what that looks like. Be very concise. Don't have a deck which is 50 slides long, right? Because chances are no one is going to read that. I always say a pitch deck should be not more than 15 slides, right? So make it simple, make it concise, be very clear what your message is, and then also get someone who doesn't work for you to look at your pitch deck, right? So you might be very sure that if you come to Vilgrow, you're too early for us or you're too big for us, but you can still come and tell us, I have this deck, have a look at it, give me feedback. Always do that. It's very, very helpful. Now, what you should not do is to underestimate your competition. I've had guys say in pitching rooms that no one can compete with them because they're so innovative. It's the first idea in Africa. That could be true, but if you think about that very critically, you find that someone is doing something very similar to what you're doing. Maybe not exactly the same, but they're in your space. It's good for you to show that you're aware that there are guys like that. don't bluff, you know. Don't create an image that is not there, because what follows a pitch is due diligence, right? So if you come and lie to us that you sold $1 million last year, we'll catch you in the first 2 days of due diligence. So you waste your time. So be honest about your pitch, you know. Be honest about your figures, you know. Be clear about your dream. Don't have a promise. You know, I've seen so many startups with a valuation of $50 million, and they're 2 years old. That can happen. That happens a lot. But then the first thing someone does when they see that you raise eyebrows, right? I want to know how much you sold last year but one, what your margins look like. If you come in and say that your valuation is $50 million, then I'll ask you based on what, right? And then you show me a DCF model with revenues doubling every 6 months, and we're going to have an issue with that. So be realistic. Don't undersell yourself. Just be realistic. What can you achieve? Because at times when you have a promise, it's off-putting to most investors. So I want to stop there for now and see if you have any questions or any comments for me. I told you it's a very short presentation. I'm done. Okay. That's a very good question. I think before the pitch deck, there's something called a teaser, right? Which is like a 1-2 slide document. You know, the thing is, don't share too much to people who you are not even sure they're interested in your business. So what you do, okay, usually when you're making a deal, you don't end up with a room of 20 investors. They're usually about 3 to 5 if you're lucky, right? So if you have a long list of potential investors, what you do, you first send a teaser. And then you get reactions: too small for us, too big for us, not a fit, looks interesting, share more information. So that's where you share the pitch deck. Now, lots of guys like to insist on NDAs. You share the teaser, ask for the deck, and then you say, hey, here's our NDA. That works sometimes. Other times it doesn't work, right? So you find that don't share too much too early, right? That's why I said, don't have a 50-slide deck, you know, with lots of your algorithms and stuff, right? Just share enough information. Answer those 4 questions. And so in terms of the journey, the teaser, it will help you to filter. If you had 10 investors, you'll find that now you have 4 who are interested. Then share the deck. That's also where you share your financial model, because your financial model is like a working document for your pitch deck, because that's where your figures are coming from, your evaluation, your trends, and things like that. So most investors, I would say, based on my own experience, only about 20-30% will actually go to that stage of reading your models and decks, right? So in terms of the journey, the time it takes depends who you're talking to and how prepared you are. I have seen deals take anywhere from 3 months to even over a year, you know. There's no standard for that, I would say. I don't know, was that your question? Yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, so when you're building a financial model, think about a 3-statement financial model. So that's your P&L. You're talking about, you know, your revenue, cost of sales, gross profit, you know, your overheads, EBITDA, of course, tax and the other things down there. That's the P&L. So the second thing is the balance sheet, especially if you're a very asset-heavy business. So you want to show how your asset base is growing, right? And then the cash flow statement. Now, it's important to differentiate cash from profit, because most startups don't know the difference. It's possible to be profitable but be cash negative, right? Because of so many factors like your working capital cycle. So illustrate that you understand your cash trends and your profit trends. So there's so many ratios that you need to show there. I just said, like, for the P&L, you know, gross margins, net margins, you know, EBITDA is a very interesting ratio to show. Show a bit of liquidity ratios, cash ratio, all those things, the balance. So these are the performance ratios, liquidity ratios, and things like that. Now, depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for debt, for example, you want to show that you can actually pay that debt back. So then you have to show your debt coverage, service ratio, as an example, right? So if you're looking for equity, then you want to show your valuation as part of the numbers. So it's not standard. It depends on who you're talking to, what instrument you're looking for, but those are the basic ones that you must have on your pitch deck. Last question? Yeah.
There are so many angel investors who can actually pinpoint you and come and work with you through the whole process, developing your financial projection, connecting you to the venture capitalists, and even taking you through the whole process. Now in Kenya, I think there's a serious challenge that startups have, because even valuating their startups is a great problem. Some of them undervalue, some of them overvalue to an extent that even investors are not impressed. So in the ecosystem in the country, is there any organizations that actually do that?
Yeah, we are one of those organizations, Vilgro. So if you apply to our programs, then we walk that journey with you, because like I said, most of our startups are scientists, right? So excellent in product development, but then on the business side, then that becomes new territory. So what we do is that we work with you. We help you to move from the lab to the market. We help you to see your innovation as a business, because it's a whole different thing that you have to think about, right? We talk you through how to build a financial model, how to create a pitch deck, how to think numbers, right? So you don't need to be an accountant for you to understand what EBITDA is and what these margins are, because these are things that you can learn very quickly. And then we also walk you through how to negotiate a deal with an investor. What's a term sheet? What's in a term sheet? What must you look out for in a term sheet, right? How do you negotiate with a venture capital investor? Things like that. So yes, there are such organizations. There's Vilgro. There are so many hubs in the country that you can work with. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Jackson. Again, I come bearing two sets of news. The bad news is we have to cut short this session because of time. The good news is Jackson is with us during the networking session, so you can meet him, get to network, ask him more questions, and thank you so much for that. Let's give him a round of applause. Awesome. So our next session, it's now focused on the modes to combat some of the problems, just because the conversations were really, really good. So as our first innovator, I would like to invite Daisy from Zuri Health. Said elevator pitch. Daisy from Zuri Health, just to tell us about Zuri Health and what it is.
Hi everyone. Hi, my name is Daisy Siaho. I'm the co-founder and chief product officer at Zuri Health. I've actually been put on a spot, but I like this because I'm always excited to share our journey at Zuri Health and what we are building towards democratizing access to healthcare in Africa. Yes. I'll do the. All right. Let me know when it's ready. Oh, thank you. There we go. So our journey at Zuri Health started with a vision to provide quality, affordable, and accessible healthcare solution for all with a simple swipe. And this is because millions of people in Africa do not have access to basic affordable healthcare. And the most affected are people living in the rural and underserved communities. That is over 600 million people. Africa bears a painful doctor-to-patient ratio of 1 to 10,000 and a low insurance penetration rate of less than 2%. And in as much as we have a lot of tech solutions built towards focusing or providing these solutions, we still see that 65% of mobile phone users on the continent do not have access to smartphones. At Zuri Health, we took time to build a product that will fill this gap by digitally connecting patients to healthcare service providers, because what we saw was a huge market opportunity with now a lot of people, over 57 billion from clinical laboratory services, telemedicine services, and pharmaceutical services. So what does Zuri Health do? At Zuri Health, we've built a virtual hospital. On one hand, it comprises of an app, a website, and a chatbot. This gives users access to pharmacy, labs, and Dr. at Home services, including telemedicine. So patients can chat and consult with doctors. They can buy medication, have it delivered to their doorstep, book labs and diagnostic tests, and even request for Dr. at Home services. So you can call it your health super app. We have also taken into cognizance Africa's unique challenges and provide fast-level medical consultation via SMS service. And this takes care of the over 65% of the mobile phone users without access to smartphones. So these are all our channels. What we intend to do is to make it easy for you to chat with doctors the same way it's easy for you to chat with your family and friends. So we have the SMS service, we have the WhatsApp, an AI-powered chatbot called Vera, and our mobile app on iOS and Android. We have multiple revenue streams that gives us a very clear path to profitability, from commissions, on-demand, SMS billing for patients who chat and consult with doctors on SMS service, as well as a new upcoming revenue model, which is the Care Now Pay Later, that will enable users to get access to healthcare on credit. So what makes us different is we provide an all-inclusive and comprehensive healthcare solution in one platform, which makes it easy for our users to have all their healthcare needs met. I'm sure you don't want to have 5 different apps on your mobile phone to meet your healthcare needs met. And we've also seen a very significant scale. 2 years since launch, we currently have operations across 8 African markets, and we are very high impact focused because we also focus on the low and underserved markets. We have a very strong telco partnerships. This gives us a significant distribution power, and we are also adaptable to the harsh regulatory frameworks around healthcare. So this is our current progress on impact. We currently have operations across 8 African markets. We've created over 100 job opportunities, and we've already served over 1 million users on the continent. So this is our journey towards providing sustainable development goals. This is my favorite slide. I think we will not be here without the incredible team. We are a very diverse team with high impact and focus on women as well. So from the founding team, we are 2 female co-founders and 1 male co-founder. We have experience working and doing business across Africa, and this is very personal to us. When you think about Zuri Health, it's actually named after our founder and CEO's firstborn daughter, Zuri, and it's very, very dear to us. So in terms of our traction, we've seen extensive traction with a robust distribution network, riding on strong telco partnerships and partnerships across Africa. We currently have generated over $2.5 million in revenue since launch. We've had over 80,000 chatbot interactions. We have currently over 650,000 SMS subscribers. And we recently closed a group framework agreement with MTN Group that gives us access to over 21 markets, and we intend to launch in these markets to tap into over 180 million subscribers. So this is our current fundraising journey. We were able to successfully close a 1.3 million pre-seed, and we are currently looking to close our 4 million seed round that will be able to fuel growth, sustain, and improve operations to become the #1 mobile health app in Africa. So these are some of our awards and achievements. We are currently the most awarded health tech company on the continent with over 35 awards and counting. And we also recently closed a group deal with M-Pesa Foundation, and we are currently doing a lot of series of free medical camps across all the 47 counties in Africa, providing accessible healthcare services. So what I do is to welcome you to join me on this journey towards providing affordable and accessible healthcare. Thank you very much.
That was incredible, Daisy. Thank you so much for the elevator pitch. I'll be honest, I also didn't know how people do it, but I think I've taken some lessons. Yeah. So, in keeping time, I'll call Tom from Neurolabs. I know we had him earlier on the panel, taking us through the challenges, but I just want us now for him now to focus on this innovation he's working on and tell us about himself and what he's doing.
Indeed, it will be an elevator pitch, so don't think Victor has my slides. So, at Neurolabs Africa, we impact healthcare using technology. We have developed a technology where we screen medical images for radiologists and hospitals in real time using technology. We like to say in Africa, healthcare services are overused, yet under-resourced. Healthcare providers will have overburdened issues. They need to see more customers than they actually are in number. And we say, according to the Kenya Radiologist Association, there are about 200 registered radiologists. The WHO estimates one doctor for a demographic region of 5,000 people. So we developed a model where we screen for common pathologies, about 13 pathologies on CXRs, for common indicators of pneumonia, tuberculosis, and lung cancer. We are early stage. We are currently working with UNICEF Innovation Fund to run clinical trials in Nairobi and Dakar, where we've managed to screen over 1,500 images for common indicators of these diseases. So we welcome you to be part of our journey to democratize access to diagnostic healthcare for all in Africa using technology.
Thank you, Tom. For the slides, sorry about that. Also in interest of time. So for the next innovator, I'd like to invite Alice, who was also our moderator in the earlier session, just also to take us through Aurora Health. And then after Alice, we'll have Penda Health to wrap us up. Thank you.
Okay, it seems I will be having no pitch deck, so there's a very interesting video I had wanted to share, but I hope he can set it up. So my name is Alice Muhuhu. I'm the founder of Aurora Health. I'm a doctor in training at Kenyatta National Hospital. So Aurora Health is a biotech company that is developing wearable technology. So we develop wireless ECG monitors, and we locally manufacture them in the country. Our technology is paired with artificial intelligence software, because what happens is when you have an ECG, we print ECG in a hospital. An ECG is printed at a moment in time, like just a section of this paper. So what happens is when a patient has a certain heart condition like arrhythmia, which is the prerequisite to a myocardial infarction or heart attack, what happens is that you have to monitor them for 14 days at least. So when they come to the hospital and you're checking a snapshot information of them like this, it's very hard for you to monitor them when they go home, and that's why most people actually die from heart conditions. I think 95% of people outside of the hospital due to lack of monitoring. So if you take an ECG paper like this and spread it out for 14 days, it's equivalent to 30 kilometers of paper if you spread it out. And that is the importance of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is important because we use it to check for a certain event. So I wish I had an ECG paper, but if you check an ECG paper, it's showing only 5% of an important event. So we look for QRS complexes, and only 5% of it is important. So imagine looking through 30 kilometers of paper, and only 5% of that is relevant. So through machine learning, we can be able to look for clinically relevant ECG data. So currently, we are partnered with MP Shah Hospital, which is where we are currently conducting our clinical trials. Our company also recently won the Women in Tech competition by Standard Chartered Bank. We are also in between here and Warsaw, Poland, where I go there to validate like our product. So we have team members there as well. Yeah, so if you're interested, I wanted to show you a short demonstration of our video, but it seems it's not possible. But basically, it's portable. It's wireless. You know, the traditional ECG. If you've watched movies, you know those things they stick on them and they're doing chest compressions, all those wires, that's an ECG monitor. So we have made ours wireless, portable, and it can be used without any electricity, which is important because our main target market is clinics outside of Nairobi who don't have electricity and don't have stable internet. So it can be able to connect wirelessly via Bluetooth to a phone. Any smartphone, Android, the cheapest smartphone, can be able to get live recordings of this from our hardware. Yeah. I think that's a snapshot. If you want more information, please reach out to me after this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. So I've received news we can play Alice's video before we go to Panda Health. So let's just see if that can be sorted.
So before you play, you're about to watch a real demonstration of our product. The video you're going to see is a clinic in Kisumu that we're testing with. This clinic, when we got there, had no electricity and no stable internet connectivity. So you can be able to see how it can be used in such a Sorry. So that is an offline recording. I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Victor.
I think after HealthTech innovations, we can talk about actual technical problems.
No, when you use a mic, they have to mute the...
I think after HealthTech, we can talk about technical. Whichever place in the world you go, there's always things happening. So the last innovator, I'd like to introduce Panda Health. 3 minutes, tell us about their solution, and I believe they also have some news to tell us.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Kiptines. I'm a medical doctor, family physician, working at Panda Health. I'm the head of medical services. Normally, Dr. Rob Koroma, Chief Medical Officer, is the one who stands here. I'm a provider. I am the user of our health tech. I don't know if Panda still qualifies to be called a startup, probably does. I'll give you our tech journey. We started in 2012, so we are 11 years. Are we a startup? Started in 2012. We are a group of 19 medical centers right now. We serve 30,000 patients a month, and we have a telemedicine center which serves 1,000 paid teleconsultations per month. In 2012, we started with paper, with the files that Alan Wakili was talking about. 5 years later, in 2017, we got our cloud-based electronic medical record, and that's where our journey in tech started. So In 2017, we got our electronic medical record. We doubled our number of medical centers around that time. And then in 2019, 2020, we introduced what we call the Clinical Decision Support System on our EMR. That is a tech-enabled visit. So what happens is, one thing we notice, and one of the challenges we face in clinical care, is what we call the implementation gap. The provider knows and went to school and studied for very many years on what they should do. That a child will come with diarrhea and need X, Y, Z. But at the point of care, when you have the patient in front of you, if it's 11 p.m., 10 hours after your shift started, you may forget some key guideline-based recommendations. Alternatively, depending on your history and your training, you may just never know and have forgotten. COVID showed us how things changed so drastically. At the beginning of COVID, the way we were treating patients and the end was drastic in terms of guideline updates. So the point of care, at the moment I'm seeing a patient, what am I supposed to do? What is the guideline recommendations for this patient? So in 2019, 2021, we introduced the Clinical Decision Support System, which helped our providers basically had pop-ups in our EMR. You present a child who comes in with cough. What are the things you need to look for and identify? If you all know, doctors beyond my generation used to have horrible handwriting. I write nicely and take pride in that, still do, maybe Dr. Motiso, yeah? Right now, and so what now happened when you have EMR and you have this open page of just write, patient comes in, looks this, like there's no guided clinical documentation. So what our CDSS does is guide you, this child, how old, how many times are they breathing? It guides you to the key red flags that you need to make an appropriate diagnosis through the right investigations. So that's what our clinical decision system did. So it guides you on your investigations, it guides you on getting to the right diagnosis, and then it gives you the treatment recommendations based on the diagnosis you have inputted. So that's what we did in 2019, 2020. What are we doing now? So, thanks to the support of, we are in the current cohort and winners of the AI for Health challenge. Yay! So what's next? And this is where I think I had lots of comments coming in that I think I'll be able to speak to. So when we have the clinical decision support system, we want to now add generative AI in that clinician workflow. So let me give you an example. I came in an Uber, and Uber already there's no taxi driver. Who has that one taxi driver that you still call and never use an Uber? I don't know. Who has that one taxi driver? Okay, so we all use Ubers because right now, to be a relevant taxi driver, you need to be able to use the relevant app, which is Uber, Bolt, whatever app we use. And that's exactly what is happening in medicine. That to be a relevant doctor in the future, you need to be able to integrate these digital health automations. So now what AI in health looks like is, imagine if that Uber could tell the driver before that this patient, this rider, Sarah, rated the previous driver as 3 because he played reggae music, 2, he was overlapping, 3, because whatever reason. So therefore, by the time that Sarah is being picked up, this guy already has her stats and knows off with the reggae, no overlapping, it's going to be a long drive. And therefore, Sarah is happy and rates him 5. So what it looks like in healthcare, AI in health, is what if, before I see what we are building basically right now, is as I see Dr. Motiso, I know that this is you're right in front of me. You're right in front of me. Sawa, Dr. Motiso's friend. As I see Dr. Motiso's friend, I will be able to now know, I'll get some AI-generated information that this is a man. Let me use a woman, it's easier. This is your friend. This is a woman of reproductive age. Her last pap smear was 3 years ago. She's coming in. She's had a history of recurrent cough. These are her children. I continue with my usual CDSS guided recommendation, but things I would have forgotten, things I would not have focused on for whatever reason. The line outside the 11th hour of my shift are now brought up to me due to AI generation. Even when it comes to the diagnosis, I may be saying this is tonsillitis, but it can give me now differential diagnosis on have you considered X, Y, Z because of these vitals that you missed out on? Or is this asthma because this person has come 7 times and received the same treatment with no improvement? That's what generative AI can look like in the healthcare sector. People now ask, I'm a doctor, why am aren't I going to lose my job? No, because there's the science I studied, and that's what AI is going to help me do. But there's the art of medicine, which is being able to see the patient, explain that ECG that was AI generated in a language the patient understands, touch the patient, which is something we have forgotten as doctors when we got these laptops. That art of medicine can never be replaced by AI, and so therefore, AI in healthcare just makes me a more efficient, more consistent, standardized doctor. And then finally, I know I'm using all those minutes that the slides used. And finally, scalability. Right now, we are 19 medical centers across Nairobi metropolis. We want to expand across Kenya into the rest of Africa. When I am able, as the head of medical services and clinical excellence is key, when we open in Matamu or when we open in Kitui, I need to know that the standard of care that clinician I have not been able to interact with remains. I need to know that the snake bites that I have not seen in years will be well treated, right? And that's where AI comes in, because it'll generate what is necessary. Of course, there are errors, we talked about it, but there are ways to control it and leverage on what's really great about it. So scalability, opportunity for learning. The fact that I can get ideas that I never thought of, have you thought of X, Y, Z, is like being in a ward round with my colleagues, because medicine is all about, it's an apprenticeship. It's like being in the ward round with my colleagues and people saying this, and I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. But AI provides that as an assistance in my clinical care. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah, for the staircase speech. It was great. Thank you so much for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the close of the Nairobi Meetup by the HealthTech Hub Africa. And I believe there's no one better to close us off than the one and only Sharon Batamuriza.
All right, so I'm not really good standing in front of people, so bear with me. My name is Sharon Watamuliza, and I work as a programs director at Bridge for Billions. At Bridge, we are a social enterprise that focuses on democratizing entrepreneurship. And I would like to also introduce my colleague who's also in the room. Lucio, maybe you can say a quick hi. Okay, great. So this was an amazing, amazing session. This is our first meetup in Nairobi. We have always had events in Kigali, Senegal. So it's really, really great to see the audience, the conversations that were had here. It's amazing to see that people have a lot to talk about, clearly. So there is a need for platforms like this. The session was supposed to be about investor. We ended up directly to policies. So clearly, there is a need for synergies between health tech innovators and policies, because when the policies are not clear, the regulations are not clear, investors cannot invest in the companies. So the two sectors are very, very highly intertwined. So as we are closing, I would like to start with thanking all the participants. And I'll start with Dr. Mwiti. Thank you for joining us today. Dr. Mwiti is very passionate about innovators. Since day one we met, you have always spoke about advocacy, you always spoke about patient, and you always focused about doctors. You always asked, do you have like an association of doctors included? So clearly your passion is really, really tied to the beneficiary, the end use of any solution or innovation being built, which is the patient. And all of us have been a patient at some point. If you haven't, well, you're really lucky. And then the keynote, Aisling, who works for the Global Fund, and the Global Fund is also one of the anchor partners for this program. We also had the panelists, so Tom, Neuro Labs. Thanks for your calm, cool energy. And then we have Dr. Stephen Mutiso. Thanks for joining us again, because we're together in Dakar, and we had very, very nice sessions. So it's always great to have government, actually officials attend this type of sessions, because there needs to be synergies, and the synergies start with conversation and then mindset shift, right? So the two can't work. Innovators and government can't work in isolation. There's have to be synergies. We also have Alice, who was our moderator today. So Alice, thanks for joining. I know I called you yesterday and you jumped in right in and really accepted to moderate the session. So thanks for the flexibility. And then for the presenter, so Sarah, Dr. Sarah, nice to meet you today. We always communicate with Rob, so it's nice to see another Penda Health face. It's nice to meet you. And then there is also doctors, but they didn't show. And there is me, and then everybody else. So thanks everyone really for joining the session today. I would say the main topic I took in today was, at the end of the day, either you're building an innovation, you're raising fund, you want to invest, it trickles down to the patient. So how do you really help people to have access? I mean, I always have issues with doctors. You go to the first person, they ask you your name. You go to the second person, they ask you your name. You go to the third person, they ask you your name. You go to the same doctor, the next day they ask you the same information. So all these innovations are very important in terms of just speeding out the process. Because if I'm a patient, I'm not feeling well, all those processes just triggers I would say actually majority of people die because of processes, not because of the illness. So the better the automation of the processes, the better the patient, the better the record, the better of lives in general. So thanks, Victor, for hosting the event today, and thanks everyone for being here. Hopefully we can, Aisling, as an anchor partner, hopefully we will be able to have more of these sessions. So just to give people a little bit of background for the HealthTech Hub. So the HealthTech Hub, as Aisling mentioned earlier, it started in 2021. It was started in, the actual cohort started in 2022. So last year we had the first cohort. This year we had the second cohort. In total we have a majority of companies that are 68 from 17 different African countries. So this is a Pan-African program specifically. In terms of thematic areas, the company have to really be focused on health tech specific, so health innovation within 4 thematic areas. So that can change, who knows, but for now we have 4, and that's cardiovascular health, we have virtual health and care, breast cancer, and optimization of data for driven decision making. So those are the 4 thematic areas in which the program is focusing on. I would say we have a next call for the next cohort coming soon, so check out on the HealthTech website, apply if you're a startup and really want to be part of this community. We also have a summit coming up, which is an investor-specific summit in Kigali in October, so it's coming soon. It's kind of in conjunction with the CDC Africa event as well. So those who will be in Kigali, please be able to join us. I don't want to take too much of your time, but thanks everyone for being here, and thanks Victor for hosting.
Thank you, Sharon, for those closing remarks. I think in addition to that, I would also like to extend my thanks to Jackson. I know I called you last minute and you're able to come up with a pitch. Also to Alan, despite the time management. Thank you. All these people, I call them like in the last 2 days, just telling them about this, and they're very ready to jump on it. And more overall, thank you to the Madavi team. So as I said, to the people who came in late, my name is Victor Mbuyo. I work with Madavi agency. So some of the people you've seen who coordinating the event, helping you to around, and also just ensuring you had a good time. I work with those awesome people, and they're the ones who put this together. So I want to also thank you guys for doing that. So the next session is, we're quite late on time, but we had a networking session at the balcony area, so where you can just go network with each other, have some few drinks, have some snacks, because it's been a long afternoon, and just get to know each other, and all those questions that you had put aside, now this is the time to ask them. So thank you everyone, and can head to the balcony.
We also have data on everything that's sold in these facilities. So definitely
Kamera itashinda hapa tu. Itashinda hapa.
Hii itashinda hapa. Sasa hii ndio itakuwa
Oh, hii inashinda tu hapa. Haina place nyingine. Ndani kuna lights. Lights kwa lights.
kama ni pale pale.
Ndio naendea. Mtani waangalia. Mutalia. Wait. Captain ako wapi? Captain. Wait. Kam kwambie kitu. Si kuna tei hapo. Hawako to the idea nikiwa record. The moment unaweka light hivi, sasa wana shy off.
Sawa wanahepa.
Wanahepa.
Kuna
unajua kuna madaktari na nini industry.
So tuacha tunyonge kata hiyo part. Acha niambie,
hawako for the idea juu ukienda ukweka.
5. Wacha niambie hao. Wacha niambie hao. Hatutaki hiyo record hizi parts. Wacha niambie.
Record two interviews instead. Juu ukiweka hivi kamera, wase wanashine. Nimeona kama panelist ameniambia ndio cheza chini.